American grassroots political movements are one of the most powerful ways we can make change. So true at the workplace. Check out Future Hindsight, a weekly civic engagement podcast for conversation with Jess Kutch of coworker.org, and discover how gig workers can take collective action. Listen to Future Hindsight wherever you get your podcasts. Also, folks, this program sponsored today by SunsetLakeCBD.com, one of our favorite sponsors. I've told you about them in the past. We were all CBD skeptics here. These folks are fans of the show. They contacted me. They're like, try it out, see if you like it. I was skeptical. They're a farm up in Vermont outside of Burlington. They were doing dairy for Ben and Jerry's, and they decided to diversify. They started to grow hemp. It's 100% pesticide free. They only use organic fertilizers. They work with the University of Vermont, one of the top universities in the country in terms of growing CBD. And they are working on implementing regenerative agricultural practices. They have great business practices, $15 a minimum wage for all their employees, or a minimum anyways. Their employees own the majority of the company. And so they sent us a bunch. Matt is the expert on the smokables, but I had tried tinctures before. It didn't really help me. And their tinctures, the 750, the 1500, the 3000 milligrams, is it? Whatever it is. It helps me sleep better. They also have gummy bears that are delicious, full of CBD, help you sleep better. And also, for me, the topical solve has been awesome. I've given it as gifts to people. I've gotten responses from listeners about arthritis. I used it on my eczema because you get eczema, you're freaking out, you don't know what to do, you try it, and it worked. I'm not saying the eczema is going to work for you, but I can tell you everybody I've sent it to for their aches and pains have come back with great reviews. Plus, they have coffee that is infused with CBD, Peruvian dark roast coffee infused with CBD. That's my weekend beverage. Matt, give everybody up an update on the smokables.
Yeah, the smokables are great. You can stick them right in your grinder. Also, I do like the pre-rolls. It's a nice, non-intoxicant, non-carcinogen smokable that I think is good.
I just gave some smokables, actually, to a friend of mine who is an occasional guest on this program, and he quite enjoyed them. He's not a big pot smoker because he doesn't like to get that paranoid feeling, but he likes to relax, and this thing worked. He was psyched. I was shocked, but he liked it. These guys, like I say, fans of the show, Left is Best is their coupon code. You get 20% off. One word, Left is Best, at SunsetLakeCBD.com. We will put the link in our podcast description. And now on with the show.
The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Cedar.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
If I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Tuesday, October 2nd, 2020. My name is Sam Cedar. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Professor Emeritus from UMass, Richard D. Wolff, on the sickness is the system when capitalism fails to save us from pandemics or itself. Meanwhile, Trump returns to the White House as his enablers reap what they sow, and staff hold their breath in fear. And a reminder, the White House still refusing to do any contact tracing from what now everyone considers to be a super spreader event. White House also has overruled FDA's vaccine standards in order to rush a vaccine to market, to the election. CNN poll has Joe Biden up by 16 points in a national lead. 9-point lead in Michigan, up in Wisconsin, up in Pennsylvania. More polling later. The Supreme Court reinstates witness requirement for mail-in ballots in South Carolina because it's not like there's a pandemic going on. Meanwhile, 100,000 already sent ballots were invalidated by Iowa state courts, but just breaking, another judge blocked the Secretary of State from that very order. So 100,000 ballots in Iowa still up in air. Eric Trump deposed in a New York Attorney General fraud case. Meanwhile, the IRS is investigating NRA Chief Wayne LaPierre. Exxon has big plans to make the planet even more uninhabitable. The officer who shot the unarmed Jonathan Price in West Texas, charged now with murder. The subject of that Project Veritas smear claims he was offered a bribe to implicate Ilhan Omar. And congrats, folks. COVID on the rise in 34 states. Alarm bells are ringing. But who's listening? All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here. Much appreciated. We have a lot to get to today. We have Professor Richard Wolff back on the program. It's been a while since I've spoken to him. Very glad he can make it with us today because, you know, we have basically two different problems that are going on that are both concurrent and related. We talk about the failure of this country, the richest country in the nation, to deal with coronavirus in a fairly efficient manner, in one which mitigates the misery and the suffering that inevitably comes with a pandemic. There's no one who believes that if we had a different president or a different government, there'd be no pandemic. But you look to countries, and obviously we can't be like New Zealand, which hasn't had a new case in 25 days. But when we look to places like Canada and Europe, we're doing a miserable job at this. And part of it is because we have a system in this country that pre-existed the pandemic that is not suited to serving the American public. And it becomes that much clearer in the case of a pandemic where you have an urgent need to deal with these things, both in terms of healthcare and in terms of keeping people from suffering the economic, I guess, second order effects of a pandemic. And we're going to talk to Professor Wolff about the structural things. And then the other problem, of course, the most obvious one, at least to people, the one that is clear, that is in our face every day, just returned from Walter Reed Hospital. And to be fair, I mean, I don't know if I really want to be that fair, but it's not just Donald Trump. I mean, it's the whole Republican Party. Donald Trump doesn't do anything without the enablers in the Republican Party. Here's Donald Trump returning from Walter Reed Hospital First, play the clip first of him ascending the steps of the White House. They want to show that he's healthy, ladies and gentlemen. So instead of going in the back entrance, he walked up the steps. He's going to show everybody that he's healthy. And he gets up to the top of the steps. And here he is. And I don't know if you can see this, but he takes his mask off, of course, because we know how effective that has been. Takes his mask off, and then he basically huffs and puffs for a minute. And then he delivers this, I don't know, speech, inspiring speech to the American public. Here he is. No sound. Here we go.
Just left Walter Reed Medical Center, and it's really something very special. The doctors, the nurses, the first responders, and I learned so much about coronavirus. And one thing that's for certain, don't let it dominate you. Don't be afraid of it. You're going to beat it. We have the best medical equipment. We have the best medicines, all developed recently.
Oh, my God.
And you're going to beat it. I didn't feel so good. And 2 days ago, I could have left 2 days ago. 2 days ago, I felt great, like better than I have in a long time. I said just recently, better than 20 years ago. Don't let it dominate. Don't let it take over your lives. Don't let that happen. We have the greatest country in the world. We're going back. We're going back to work. We're going to be out front. As your leader, I had to do that. I knew there's danger to it, but I had to do it. I stood out front. I led. Nobody that's a leader would not do what I did. And I know there's a risk, there's a danger, but that's okay. And now I'm better, and maybe I'm immune. I don't know. But don't let it dominate your lives. Get out there. Be careful. We have the best medicines in the world, and it all happened very shortly, and they're all getting approved, and the vaccines are coming momentarily. Thank you very much. And Walter Reed, what a group of people. Thank you very much.
Yeah. God knows how long he was on his back after that. I mean, we have other footage of him, breathing in quite a bit. I'll tell you something. If that guy wasn't the president of the United States and he was just on, like he was, I don't know, 5 years ago on television selling some product, and he said those things, I think there would be the potential to sue the guy. I mean, go in and tell people, don't be afraid of it. Go out there, wrestle with it. We got the best healthcare. Well, he's got the best healthcare. He's got government-run healthcare.
You're going to beat it as 200,000+ people have died.
Right. All you 208,000 people, you guys are suckers. You just didn't try hard enough. The other people still sick from it. You guys are suckers. You didn't try hard enough. Why didn't you go to Walter Reed? Why didn't you have a helicopter fly you to one of the top medical facilities in the world, completely free of charge, have a massive team of doctors, get drugs that aren't available except for on an experimental basis, get shot up with a ton of steroids, and then, we'll see where he is in 3 or 4 days. But that's assuming he recovers. Why don't you do that, American public? I mean, oddly enough, Donald Trump has pointed out a structural problem that we have in this country. In a moment, we're going to come back when we talk to Professor Richard Wolff. He's going to outline that structural problem that Donald Trump, I think, inadvertently pointed out. You don't have what he has access to, but that's simply a choice that our society makes. Meanwhile, some sponsors, as you know, we're home more than usual these days. Still hard to keep a close eye on things. I don't know, maybe your kids are at home because they're at fully remote school, like mine. Maybe you got to keep an eye on the cats because they're not used to being locked in like they are. Whatever it is, with Ring, you can keep your home safe no matter where you are. and they are on a mission to make neighborhoods safer. Ring's home security products are designed to give you peace of mind around the clock. They give you video doorbells. They can give you cameras that are on the corners of your homes or inside your homes. You can keep an eye on your doorstep. You can speak to delivery people. With outdoor security cameras, you can check on every part of your house. You never miss a moment. They have smart lighting that brightens up blind spots. Make sure you always come home to a brightly lit house. Full home security systems that give you everything you need to protect your family, your pets, your property. For me, there's two things I like about Ring. One, I love the two-way audio. And then I also love, they have outdoor cameras that have solar panels. So you can have them remote. They don't necessarily need to be wired or attached to your house, and they don't rely on batteries, which inevitably run out of power. But they have all sorts of different versions of this. You got to go check it out. Head over to ring.com/majority right now. Check out the multitude of different things. They have stuff, automatic lights that turn on, lights with cameras. You can get a special offer on the Ring Welcome Kit when you go to ring.com/majority. The Welcome Kit includes the Ring Video Doorbell 3 and Chime Pro. It's all you need to start building custom security for your home today. Just go to ring.com/majority. That's ring.com/majority. Also, as you know, it's a good time. There's never not a good time to learn something new, in my opinion. But we got ever-changing routines. People are trying to get back into like maybe doing a little bit of exercise. Some people are commuting again. Finding the best way to learn new things can be tricky. My recommendation, Blinkist. It's an app I've talked about a lot on this program. You can do it on your phone. You can do it on your tablet. You can do it on your web browser. It is unique and it is powerful. It takes the key insights from over 3,000 nonfiction bestsellers. They get 27 categories in which these books fall into, and they condense them down into what they call blinks, which are basically just short snippets you can read or listen to in 15 minutes. Blinkist also is now offering original podcasts from top authors and creative thinkers, or you can also dive deeper into full-length nonfiction audiobooks at a special discounted price. That's fun for Matt. But for me, I'm like the 14 million other people who use Blinkist. I do it to check out stuff. Sometimes it's just books that I feel like I should read, but I don't want to read. Just to get a notion of what I'm doing, what's out there. And other times it's books that like, I don't need to read the prose of how to, make friends or something like that. Just give me the 5 bullet points and then I'll go out and make friends. I mean, I don't know if it works for me, but I'll do my best. I mean, that's basically it for me with Blinkist. Is that there are some books that, and for instance, when I interviewed Stuart Stevens, I wanted to know what some of those Lincoln Project people were doing. And I wasn't going to read the whole book, but I read that, I Blinkist, the Rick Wilson, Everything Trump Touches Dies. Still very, very apropos. Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker, another book of like basically the how-to, the self-help. I don't need to hear all the in-between stuff. I just want the key takeaways. And I got it in 15 minutes and I listened to it. Right now, Blinkist has a special offer for just our audience. Go to Blinkist.com/majority report. Start your 7-day free trial. Get 25% off a Blinkist premium membership and up to 65% off of audiobooks. Yours to keep forever. Matt loves that. That's Blinkist, spelled Blinkist, Blinkist.com/majority report. Get 25% off a premium membership and a 7-day free trial. Blinkist.com/majority report. And lastly, you've heard me talk about Brooklinen before. They're home of the internet's favorite sheets. There also happen to be my favorite sheets in my home. Also, I have comforters. And in fact, as I was doing the show, my daughter is texting me, asking me to order her a comforter from Brooklinen and a duvet, apparently. But let me just talk about this today. Brooklinen has fantastic other housewares. And right now I'm looking for anything to mitigate the absolute crap show that we're involved in. So when I get out of the shower, I have a towel that actually just like for even like 60 seconds makes me feel like I am in some way just sort of like not where I'm at. Then I'm happy. And their towels are fantastic. They're plush, they're soft, but they're absorbent. They're not too like loose. They are firm and soft. I don't know how else to describe that. I know that sounds a little weird. Brooklyn's towels are not only luxurious, but they're reasonably priced. Brooklinen is the perfect place to find all the comforts for your home, including those ultra soft towels. They're so confident in their product that everything comes with a lifetime warranty. Use promo code MAJORITY. You get 10% off your first order at brooklinen.com. That's Brooklinen, BROOKLINEN.com. Promo code MAJORITY. Brooklinen, everything you need to live your most comfortable life. All of this will be included in our podcast description. You can find the links there or in the YouTube description. Just a reminder, it is your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajority.report.com. When you do, you get the show free of commercials and in addition also to more stuff, more content at the end of the program. All right. We'll play just a little bit of music and we'll be back with Professor Wolff. Okay, we are back. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the program author of a multitude of books and Professor Emeritus from UMass. And his latest, The Sickness of This is the System, When Capitalism Fails to Save Us from Pandemic or Itself. Richard Wolff, welcome back to the program.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
So, Professor, I want to get into this, but I got to start. Let me start with this, which I thought was pretty funny because there was a piece today in the New York Times. Jerome Powell, as you know, the chair of the Federal Reserve, was sending a message to his fellow policymakers. This was today. He had prepared remarks before the National Association for Business Economics, and he underlined, as he has before, that the economy's resilience owes substantially to strong government support for households and businesses. Now, we can get a little nitpicky about the resilience of this economy. We're already starting to see it being less resilient, as it were. I mean, there's a couple of different versions of how non-resilient it is. But I'm just struck by the notion that your argument, in many respects, is the same argument as the Fed chief is. Now, how we would deploy those resources, the government might be a little bit different because I think you're a little bit more oriented to helping people first rather than corporations. But let's talk about this because I started the show by saying that we have two sort of concurrent problems when it comes to COVID. One is the president, but the other pre-existed COVID and made it that much more difficult for us to deal with both the health implications of this and the economic implications of that. That's your argument. Tell us about it.
Well, I think you put your finger right on it. Basically, what I wanted to do was to take the focus we all have on the illness, the sickness, the pandemic, and to say, wait a minute, there's a deeper sickness, a bigger sickness. And indeed, it's what made the virus so deadly in this country, that we have an economic system that is sick. And like anything else in life, if one sickness happens on top of another sickness, oh my goodness, everything is multiplied. It's just a tragedy that we're going through. Part of the argument is very foundational. It says, and I know this is sharp, but there's no way around it. Private profit-driven capitalism and the public health don't go together. You have to face that. We have in this country all the factories and offices and stores able to produce adequate quantities and qualities of masks, gloves, ventilators, hospital bed. We can produce what would have been necessary to be prepared for this virus, knowing that we had a catastrophic virus in 1918 in this country, killed 700,000 people, knowing that we've had MERS and SARS and Ebola and all the rest in recent years. We could have been prepared. We should have been. We weren't. We still don't have adequate testing in this country. For example, in our schools, so that the children don't become carriers of this disease, etc. Why don't we? Well, the answer is the private profit system. And let me explain it, because I will do it from the point of view of the businessman or woman. It doesn't pay to produce millions of masks, stick them in warehouses all over the country, make sure they're clean for the next indefinite period of time, monitor those that wear out, that need to be replaced, security for them all. And for what? For a disease that may not come for years. No private capitalist in a capitalist system is going to do it. And the reason has to be stated starkly. What's good for profit and what's good for the public health clash. It's not that the profit system is the best way to do it. It's that the profit system is the worst way to do it, because it contradicts profitability. So that's the first thing we have to face. Capitalism doesn't deliver public health, which ought to be one of the criteria of a system if you're going to live under it.
Okay, I want to expand on this a little bit. I mean, let's define what we're talking about in terms of public health, right? Because we just saw Donald Trump fly to one of the top hospitals in the country, get the best treatment you could possibly get. That exists, right? I mean, and just coincidentally, it also happens to be completely government run. All those people. Let's put that aside for a moment, because many people would say, like, the prince of whichever Middle Eastern country will come here for their cancer treatment. This is not treatment that is available to, I don't know, 99.9% of the American public. So when we talk about public health, just give me a sense of how you define that, just so that we can understand, what our capitalist system is not up to providing.
I mean by public health, an institutional arrangement whereby a certain minimum basic quality of care is a right of the public. It's called the public's health because it's for the public. It is something understood. Every major university has a department of public health where young people are taught what you need to know to make a population healthy. Give them the vaccinations they need. Give them the vitamin. Give them the regimens in terms of their diet. Provide institutions, we call them clinics, hospitals, where they can go for any emergency, injury, illness, you have it. Be prepared for those kinds of injuries you can foresee. You have a little ambulance next to the football game because people hurt themselves in football, and you are to be prepared. We knew what was needed to be prepared for a virus that can come at any time. We knew what we needed. We knew how to produce it. We didn't do it because it isn't profitable. Let me hammer home one more point.
Sure.
If you let me. We know even what to do in this case. We don't admit it to ourselves because we are fundamentalist when it comes to capitalism in this society. So we don't admit it. But we do know what I just said. No one is surprised. And we know what has to happen. The government has to step in to compensate for the failure of private capitalism to do what we know needs to be done, namely protect us against viruses, among other things. And the government could have. The government could have bought the masks, put them in a warehouse, watched them, stored them, cleaned them, repaired them, whatever was necessary. We know. You know how we know? Because that's what the government does with the military. It doesn't pay anyone to produce a missile or a guided missile or a gun or a ship or a plane or a tank. Do what? Put it in a warehouse? Watch it for an indefinite period of time until maybe a war comes along? No private capitalist would do it. And that's why the government comes in, buys those things as they roll off the assembly line, and then we, the taxpayers, pay the cost of storing it and waiting indefinitely. But what this government did for the military defense, it didn't do for public health. So the government didn't make up for the failure. So here we sit with a failed economic system and a failed government. 4.5% of the people of the world live in the United States, 25% of the COVID cases. It's a failure written in neon over the middle of Times Square.
And I just want to, there's a couple of things I want to just address here. And one is this notion. I mean, the reason why you bring up the military is you're saying, like, the answer is not that our government's not capable of doing this. The answer is simply that we have decided as a society, either consciously or unconsciously, and I want to circle back to that, but I want to put in a pin in it for a moment. We have decided as a body politic, we're just not going to do it. We just don't value making sure that our public health is taken care of as much as we value the ability to launch an assault on another country without having to wait for tanks to roll off or planes to roll off. Yeah. And I just want to circle back to, you use the example of masks and PPE, but also we saw this in the context of hospitals. I mean, in New York State, the moment that we got this under control was when the governor of the state basically, I don't know what the word is when, it's not nationalized because it's just happened in the state, but every hospital in this state, regardless of private or public, came under the purview of the state government. Now, and that was the most obvious, most efficient decision to do because you had resources that needed to be moved from one to another, and you needed some type of central coordination for that. We should also note, though, that there is a lot of data that suggests if you lived in a low-income area, you were more likely to die of coronavirus, in part because we had cut back on the public hospital system there, or they didn't have adequate hospitals. That's also on the governor. But that is both those two, decisions, political decisions, illustrate what you're talking about.
Exactly. And not that the Trump administration is the hallmark of all evil. These things we're talking about predate the arrival of Mr. Trump. But he does deserve the credit for making it worse. He tilted more, he gave more money to the military than they even asked for while cutting the budget for the Pandemic Preparations Committee, for the Centers for Disease Control, and so on. He's just part of a tendency to shortchange the public health and at the expense of people. I mean, 200,000 or 210,000 dead people in America, that's a more costly loss than most of the military engagements this country has ever participated in. The disproportion here reflects, when I was young, we used to be told things in our schools that people in Asia, I kid you not, don't value human life the way we do here in the West. I remember going home, repeating this, and having my father get very upset and give me a lecture about why the teacher was wrong. But here's the joke. In terms of how societies are really reacting to this virus, if anything, it looks like the reverse, right? That there's much more care there to shut down the society, to save lives, than we have here. The president saying in a public interview, it is what it is, when in fact it didn't have to be. And then to see that Black and brown people are suffering disproportionately, the deaths, the illnesses. I mean, what do you think Black Lives Matters is marching about? It's as if the president is literally instituting a program to show that systematic racism functions when life and death itself are hanging in the balance. For me, that's why I wrote the book, to understand we have a system that is our problem. That's why the COVID is so bad here. And so will be the future problems we have, because this system is systematically breaking down for the majority of the people.
All right, and so we have basically sort of two orders of problems here too. Let's put Donald Trump aside. I think everybody is sort of, hopefully, is familiar with his failures. And when you hear our numbers, like you said, 4% of the world's population, 25% of the world's deaths. I want to talk about in a moment other countries and the way that they deal with this, and not just the way that they deal with it now, but what was in place before the pandemic hit, the way their society is organized, the political choices they have made that made them much more resilient when it came to the pandemic. Because I just want to remind people, we have two different, they're not distinct from each other, but they're two sort of silos of issues. And maybe silo is not the right word, because like I say, they're not distinct. We have the response to the health crisis, which we have failed miserably at. And like you say, in part because of systemic reasons, because it is not profitable to keep all this stuff in reserve, and a government needs to step in and do it. And then the other is that our incentive structure in this country is such that it encouraged people to go out and work. States that didn't have funds, it wanted people to open up. I mean, look, everybody wants to go out, but we could all go out and do stuff and not actually have to go to work and subject ourselves to these risks if we made other choices. Talk about start with how other countries were already in a situation to deal with this better than we were. And then about that second order issue where, the fact that there's not proper transportation, that there's a need for people to go into work, et cetera, have increased, I guess, the virulence of this pandemic.
Sure. There's a lot of ways to do that. Let me pick one that I think gets at it right to the core. In Europe, to take examples of Germany, France, Italy, the Scandinavian countries, so on. In Western Europe, for sure, but in Europe as a whole, a decision was made that the way to handle this virus was by, and let me underscore this, not firing millions of workers. For example, at the beginning in March, unemployment rate in Germany was 5%. Today, it's 6%. No mass increase in unemployment. In Italy, it's even more dramatic. The unemployment rate a year ago, when no one ever heard of the virus, was higher than it is today. In other words, they've lowered their unemployment through the virus. What the United States did is unusual. It is, in fact, and I say this as a professional economist, it is insane. It is crazy behavior. What you need is what the Europeans did. The government there went and it helped the corporations, but there was a condition attached. It was so universal, it didn't even have to be spoken. And the condition was, we, the government, will use the taxpayers' money to help you through this crisis. We will give you enough money to cover 60, 70, 80% of the payroll. But in exchange, you fire nobody. We're not going to allow you to add to the difficulty of people fearful for their illness, fearful for their lives, fearful for what is happening to their society, to be given another problem, namely, you got no job, you've got no guarantee that the job will be there when this is over, or what the conditions would be even if you get the job. We're not going to do that to you on grounds of human cruelty. So there was no unemployment. Guess what? Since the workers couldn't go to work, or could do so only under limited conditions, but they were still getting paid, they could be given the task of making the workplace safe, move the desks apart, move the cubby holes around, create social distancing, put in the plexiglass screens so we don't breathe on each other, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Here's the contrast with America's capitalism. We fired tens of millions of people. Over 50 million people have had to go to the unemployment office and file a claim to get their unemployment. 50 million people. It's a quarter of our labor force, more than a third of our labor force has had to go through this excruciatingly difficult period. Okay, why? Well, because you couldn't think through all of this. You didn't understand that an unemployed person is not a person who, over the last 6 months, might have been given a good government jobs. You know, to do what? To test everybody, which we haven't done, to make safe workplaces, which we haven't done, to open the transportation system so it can handle moving people during a virus. I mean, we could have been doing wonderful things, but instead we created a miserable population anxious about their job. I mean, the level of failure here goes way beyond the virus to a system that is really screwed up. And here we sit now doing what? Threatening parents. Will either will send your kid to a school where he or she may contract a horrible disease and bring it home, or do without the school as a child care institution, so you can't go to. I mean, the level of dysfunction that, for me, as I watch this, leaves me with one burning question, which I ask you, Sam. Namely, why do the people of this country tolerate a system that works so badly?
I mean, I think this is the thing that I think is that I find sort of really disturbing, but also fascinating, is I don't think that there is an awareness, broadly speaking, amongst the American public that there were choices that were involved here, that were choices. Even put aside for a moment our current sort of political situation, because it's deadlocked and this and that. But there are choices that we make as a society that are ideological. Like, people think that it's just normal and there's an absence of ideology in the notion that we could go and pay a company and say, look, because we sort of did it, right? Like the Paycheck Protection Program was like a real sort of like bank shot version of it. It was limited. It was cumbersome. We made it really difficult. We sort of do it when we pay people an extra $600 on the unemployment end. But again, that's cumbersome. It's got to go. We could have done this very directly. We could have spent, I don't know, maybe a little bit more money, maybe less. Who knows? But there is an ideological sort of block here that people, I don't even think most Americans realize is an ideology. And that ideology is, and it's one that's not shared by any other country in the world. I mean, this idea that because we're giving, talk a little bit about this, because I've interviewed many people there. ProPublica has a great piece on the implications of the CARES Act and how generous our government has been with corporations, but without any strings attached. And then so stingy with people. They did a great piece on Cleveland where they saw the disparity here between a corporation that received basically free money, essentially from the government, and then everybody else. And the results are obvious. But will you explain to people this dynamic? Because the Fed did something in the CARES Act. They were given money by Treasury, which basically was the backstop for a huge lending program that was unprecedented. Will you just explain that? Because we're doing this, folks, is the point. It's just that we're pretending we're not, so that people don't realize like we're doing it strictly for the benefit of one sector of our private economy and with no strings attached. And it basically, they're like a helium balloon flying up to the atmosphere while the rest of us are sort of like, suffering from it.
I'd be glad to, and I'm glad you pointed it out. And I think historians will look back on this the way we look back on the tulip craze back in the 17th century, one of the great examples of a speculative boom that became a bubble that then burst and hurt a lot of people. And that's what this one is going to do too. Here's how it basically works. The Treasury takes a portion of our tax payments and says we're setting it aside to be a kind of backstop for the Federal Reserve. That enables the Federal Reserve to create new money. That's very important to understand. Literally to create it, whether that takes the form of bills and the coins we carry in our pocket or electronic money, simply creates accounts at the Federal Reserve for private banks around the country to take that money for themselves. it can make loans many times larger because the assumption is we can lend $1 billion. The most we need in reserve is 100 million because we'll have the money coming in and out otherwise. That's a normal banking procedure. But it's important here to understand what the Fed then did. For the first time in its history, it began directly providing credit to corporations, limitlessly. And we're talking trillions of dollars. Here's how it works. Any company that has any problem, for example, what it produces has no market. People don't want it anymore. Or they're having a fight with their unions and they can't get their business going. Or their technology is badly out of date, or whatever the problem. We have now created a situation where the quickest, easiest, and cheapest way to solve the problem is to get new money. Any corporation goes to a bank, says, give us a loan. Normally, the bank would have rules and regulations, but it doesn't anymore. Sure, it says, how much do you want? Why? Because the bank knows that within moments after giving the loan to, let's call it the ABC company, the bank turns around and sells that loan to the Federal Reserve. There it is. The Federal Reserve uses the fresh new money it created to buy the debts of private corporations. Having driven interest rates to next to nothing, the Fed has done that too. It's saying to a corporate America, here, we have all the money you need and the interest will be virtually nothing. So here it is. Solve your problems. You can't sell your goods? Don't go out of business. The Federal Reserve will backstop you. Go to any bank. The bank gets fees for all of this. So they make money even though they don't hold on to the loan. It's all very nicely greased for the banks to do it. They're doing it. Every corporation in America is borrowing money like there's no tomorrow under these circumstances. And the irony is, they're right. There is no tomorrow. You might as well borrow now because this ship is going down. That's the unspoken. And the people in the corporate America, they know what they're getting. They're getting their last chance. Here's all the money in the world. It costs you next to nothing. Do your best, man. Hope you make it because the rest of the economy is hanging on whether you do or not.
And let's be clear. These corporations are made up of individuals who decide their compensation packages. So this isn't a situation where they're saying like, oh, we're going to use this to sort of make our businesses more durable. And I mean, maybe some are, but a lot of them are going, this is a good time for me to get a bonus.
Absolutely.
And so we're just increasing wealth inequality and we're basically handing them money. And the average American, not even the average, the vast majority of Americans are not participating in this massive transfer of wealth.
That's right. And it's a holiday time. And it's, I don't know what the numbers are, but it's somewhere between a quarter, I would guess around a quarter of American corporations are now in debt to the Federal Reserve. By the way, for your libertarian friends or for your conservative friends, let's be real clear. The private capitalist sector is now on life support credit from the Federal Reserve. The very idea that we have a private sector that's separate from the government sector is now officially a total fake, a total joke. The corporate sector is desperate. That's why any hint that interest rates might go up by Jerome Powell is a cause for alarm. The stock market takes a tank. The government is the only thing that keeps this broken system going, and it does so in the way the people at the top want. One last point. When you get a loan, if you're a company, you go to a bank, you get a loan. Let's be clear. The board of directors, that's about 12, 15 people in every corporation. They're the ones who decide what to do with the loan. And there's 800 easy ways to use it to pay dividends to shareholders, keep them happy, pay out a big fat pay packages to your top executives, have a big splurge in your PR department, give them a chunk so they can make it look like you're a big guardian of the environment or whatever game you're playing. I mean, we are being taken for a ride by a system that's going down. And with each passing day, it's up to those of us who see this, because it's our job, to say to the American people, you really have a choice here. Change the system or you're at risk of going down with it.
And people should just keep in mind here. I mean, the actual involvement of the government in the private economy is in and of itself not problematic. It seems to me it is that it's simply it's going to such a narrow set of people that it is not durable, right? I mean, it's just like literally like if you're to build a house and you're to make it top heavy, it's going to tip over. And the bottom line is that if the government was basically giving money to workers to stay at home or to work only in a safe situation, the corporation is a pass-through in this instance. If they were doing that, you would have a lot happier, a lot less stressed individuals out there, and you would have a much wider base to the economy. It'd be far more durable going forward.
You know, you're absolutely right. They invented a phrase to justify giving the money to the top. And the phrase that came to stick was called trickle-down economics or trickle-down economic policy. Now, the idea was as simple as it sounds. You give money to the top, but it's okay because it will trickle down to everybody else. And the answer to that always was the facts, which is you gave an awful lot to the top and an awful little trickled down. That was the empirical critique. But a much better critique would be the one that has said, hey, if you give to the top and it doesn't trickle, you will have helped the people who need it least, and you will not have helped the people who need it most, and the ones who need it most are the majority. So that's a failed policy. So here's an alternative. Let's call it trickle up. You give money to the people at the bottom, they will then go into the stores and buy. That will produce profits for the corporations. And let's give it to the people at the bottom who need it most, who are the majority, and then let's hope it trickles up. And maybe it will and maybe it won't, but we'll be left with the majority of people helped. And that's more than what we're left with when you leave it at the level of trickle down.
Okay, so let me ask you this, and we just have a couple of minutes left. Let's assume for a moment that Joe Biden wins the presidency. He gets in, and let's assume for the moment, because I'm feeling very optimistic these days, that the Democrats take the Senate and the House, and all the Democrats, all these new Democrats who come in who may be a little bit more oriented towards, you know, the ideological perspective that government shouldn't be involved in these things unless it's just for corporations, right? They don't add that part of the phrase, but that's sort of like that's sort of understood, at least amongst themselves. What would you do? Is there like I know there's no silver bullet, but what would you say is the number one priority? What would you start with that you think can make our economy more resilient, or at the very least, lessen the opportunity for people to be immiserated in these type of situations?
Well, you know, it's hard to do this in a short amount of time, but let me try. If you want an economic system to serve the people in general, then you got to put the people in general in charge. We have a hopeless effort in this country. We give a tiny group of people, the employers of this country, who, I'll be generous, are 3 or 4% of our people are employers. All the rest are employees, right? If we give a tiny group like the employers the dominant position in every enterprise, every factory, every store, every office, a tiny group of people, the board of directors of a corporation, the owner of the enterprise, whatever we want to call it, this tiny group, we can't then be surprised that when you put them all together, they do what's best for them. So that's why they give out the profits as shareholder dividends, or they give out the profits as pay packages for the CEO. Why are we surprised by this? If we don't want these outcomes, if we don't want a handful of corporations handing out millions of dollars in donations to Republicans and Democrats, and therefore, of course, getting what they want, then we have to stop organizing our enterprises in the way that we have. And the alternative, we call, for lack of a better term, worker cooperatives. But the basic idea is to democratize the enterprise. If democracy is good where you live, why the heck isn't it good where you work? Why don't we have the majority, one person, one vote, make the decisions in each workplace, what you're producing, how you're producing, where you're producing, and here comes the big one. What are you going to do with the profits your enterprise has generated that you all helped to produce? How are they going to be used? For what ends? If you want that discretionary profit, the surplus, to be used for the mass of people, you've got to make the mass of people make those decisions. And let me assure you, if you averaged it, if you took a decision as a worker co-op, democratically, how are we going to pay everybody? They wouldn't in a million years give 5 people millions of dollars while everybody else can't send their children to college. Wouldn't happen. That's not how democracy or majorities have ever worked. That would be a breakthrough. And if we just created a sector of the American economy, let's call it the worker co-op sector, the province of Emilia-Romagna in Italy, 40% of enterprises, that's the area around Bologna in the north, 40% of enterprises there are worker co-ops. The people in that part of Italy can see what a worker co-op is, how it works. They actually have freedom of choice to work in a top-down capitalist enterprise or a democratic worker co-op. We don't have that choice in the United States because we don't have a sector that can let everybody know what kind of life it is if you work in a democratic co-op rather than a hierarchical capitalist enterprise. And I know these are fundamental changes, but our problems aren't little anymore, and we got to think a lot bigger or else we're going to miss this moment.
And just to be clear, my understanding is that at the very least there was a bill introduced, and it may have passed. But at one point there was a bill introduced by the Democrats to provide bridge loans to employees of family-owned companies that were going out of business or they wanted to sell it, and it would provide bridge loans to the employees who could then purchase the company from the family that owned it, so that the employees could take it over. And there it is. There's your workers' co-op. I mean, so there are instances. First of all, it's not that crazy of an idea. We have actually come very close to at least instituting it on some level. And we could easily have a government policy where we are providing just simply loans like we did to GM, like we're doing right now to all these corporations. Instead, we're going to employ it. We're going to offer these loans, these low-cost loans to employees to buy their company. They can create their own board of directors from the employees and run the company. I mean, look, I get my coffee from a co-op. It tastes, frankly, better than other coffees, but that's not necessarily the case. There may be other coffees that are better by a different co-op. I don't know. But the point is, none of this stuff is fantastical, and it all provides a lot more durability and sustainability for society.
Sam, if you ever wanted to, I could sit down, we could have a conversation, and I would take you through the Spanish example, the most famous in the world, where they have these co-ops, and I've had them for decades. The examples in Italy and Germany, and then the examples here in the United States. There are a whole bunch of examples. There's a whole organization called the United States Federation of Worker Co-ops that brings a kind of collective exchange of information among the growing worker co-ops in this country. So yes, it's not a new idea. It's not a fantastical idea, but I believe because of the failure of the capitalist system we're living in, its historical time has now come.
Well, Professor Richard Wolff, the book is The Sickness is the System: When Capitalism Fails to Save Us from Pandemics or Itself. Folks can start with that book and read the, I think it's about 50 essays in there that cover a lot of this stuff. And, I think there is a broad understanding in this country that our capitalist system is broken, and we're going to be looking for ways to fix it, regardless of who the president is. Well, we're going to have a much better shot, at the very least, of at least trying to get to the point where we try to fix it under Joe Biden. So hope springs eternal. We shall see. Professor Wolff, I will take you up on that, and we will do that interview on those co-ops again. Thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sam. Be glad to talk with you at any time.
Great. All right, folks. Got a couple of minutes left here in the program. We will put a link, obviously, to Professor Wolff's book on our website at majority.fm. Look, Donald Trump is both a symptom, is both a problem and a symptom of a larger problem, and we're going to have to address it going forward. We have both parties failed in many respects to address sort of the broader problems. Certainly, the Republican Party is completely oriented towards helping exclusively these corporations. But if the Democratic Party is going to get serious about actually helping people, they both need to leverage the what they know Republicans want. We saw this in the context of the CARES Act. Speaker Pelosi was convinced in April of this year that we would get support for cities and for states, support for hospitals and schools. And I don't know if that was simply a misreading of what the Republican Party is. There was a lot of people who were concerned at the time. I think even Andrew Cuomo, who, again, I don't generally take advice from, was complaining about this back in April of this year. Nancy Pelosi was convinced. I don't know if she just underestimated the complete disregard that the Republican Party holds the American public in, or it just wasn't as much of a priority as getting that money out the door for corporations. But people should understand this. This is an ideological choice. To simply say we're going to do things supposedly as we are. Now, it's unprecedented for the Fed to give money, to lend money directly to corporations. That's unprecedented. It hasn't happened before. And Jerome Powell, the chair of the Fed, says just today, the economy's resilience, to the extent that it exists, owes substantially to strong government support for households and businesses. The household support ended weeks ago. The business support keeps rolling on. But there's no rule or law that says, and there should be, if you're going to give them money, that those businesses have to care about their workers. There's no rule or law that says that businesses have to care about even their customers, or that they have to care about their communities. None of that exists. It could, but it doesn't. And understand that is a choice. That's not just something that just happens. It's a choice that is being made by our policymakers. And it's a choice that we as Americans need to be aware of, so that in the future we could say, hey, we don't want you to make that choice. We want you to make the choice that says, pay workers. If you want to do it through corporations, do it through corporations. Pay workers before they lose their job to be hired. And so that their companies can say, okay, 30% of you are coming in this week, 30% of you are coming in the next week, 30% of you are coming in the following week, 33%, 3 weeks. I'm just spitballing here, folks. And the way that we can afford to do that, the way that we can afford to be less productive but keep you safe, is because the government is paying us to pay you. So we're going to put an output out. We're going to produce what the market will bear, but we're going to do it in a safe way that is going to keep you safe, and it's going to keep you it's going to give you a lot less stress. And it will create less virus in the community, which will make it possible for your kids to go to school, maybe. That's the alternate vision for how this could have been handled. Now, Donald Trump was never going to do it because he's just living on a different planet. But the coronavirus is still going to be around if Donald Trump goes away. And so we're going to have another choice to make. It's a choice they've made in Europe and largely been far more successful at this than we have. All right, that's it for the program today. We will be back tomorrow with more. Tomorrow night is the debate between Kamala Harris and Vice President Pence. We'll check that out. Thank you for joining us. As always, you can find out more at majority.fm. Was a pleasure. Now we head into the fun half, second hour, or maybe the second 90 minutes of our program. You can join us if you like, if you're a member. In the meantime, say goodbye to our first hour viewers. And just a reminder, following this show, Nomiki Konst. Oh, wait, we're going to bring her on? Let's bring her on. We're still working on the, the first hour of the show streams on the new Choice app on inside the Peacock app. It's the Choice channel on the Peacock app. And you can check it out there. You can watch that first hour again on Peacock. They put different branding on it. Do we have the promo?
Yeah, we can pull that. Just give me a minute.
Yeah, let's pull the promo. So they put different branding on the show, which is fine. Still have the same backdrop, but different graphics, and it looks pretty cool. And you can check it out on that app every day, at least the first hour of the program. Nomi, where are you? Oh, she's still connecting. She is still connecting to the thing. Well, just a reminder, this show relies on your support. You can become a member at jointhemajority.report.com. One of the things that we do on this program is we attempt to present views that are not available in the mainstream media. Now, one of the things that I really like about this sort of syndication deal, if you will, that we've made with this Choice channel on Peacock app is that I don't know how often Professor Wolff gets on NBC and has access to that audience, but he did today, and we got a big dose of what we should be doing, and hopefully we're going to do a lot more of that. Nomi, have you seen the new? Well, it's the same show, but it's on the Peacock app.
I have, and you're indoctrinating my parents, and I love it.
Well, I'm doing my best. That's one of the things I wanted to set out to do, is to indoctrinate your folks. Here is let's. I just want to play the promo because they have it's the same. It's the same set, but different.
They mention socialism in it.
What are you going to do?
It's pretty amazing. With a communist.
People should understand that what we're talking about here is a party, not just Donald Trump. He can't do this without the party enabling him. I think Joe Biden is running the perfect Joe Biden campaign.
Well, context. It's okay.
Do you care at all about farm workers? Do you care at all about children? Do you care at all about climate change? You don't have to be a socialist or not a socialist to care about those things. In the history books, this is one of those touchstones that they use to sort of describe where people were at this point.
Look at that guy.
I don't feel like I've ever looked like that in my entire life.
Yeah, when has that been your posture?
Who is that?
I am almost like convinced that they graft my like, I don't even know if any of that is me. Maybe it's just my hair on somebody else's body.
Where did they get the picture from? Do you know?
No, I think they took it here. Like on that Friday, they came in, they took some pictures, but I don't ever remember standing like that. I don't ever remember looking like, I don't feel like I've ever looked like that in my entire life.
If I walked into the office and you were standing like that, I would be very suspicious.
It would be the way I would.
Maybe they photoshopped off your beard. Maybe that's what happened.
Matt comes in and I'm just trying to signal with my eyes. They're in the corner. They've got a weapon. Just shut up. It's a trap. It's a trap. Don't come in. It's a trap. It's a trap. It's a trap. Matt, go away. All right.
Oh my God.
We gotta let's just do. We're gonna do. We gotta go in the fun half.
So this is the part where we make fun of MSNBC? Is that how this works?
We go into the fun half and then we do that.
Yeah, exactly.
We should just tell people today on your program, you got a great show at 3 p.m., correct?
We do. At 3 p.m., we have Jonathan Smucker, who is joining us to talk about a roadmap moving forward. He literally wrote a book on this a few years ago, and this is the time to think about how we use our power as a movement effectively. And then later, we have Napoleon DeLegend and Ken Klippenstein to just talk about I can't even keep up. I keep adding stories to the news. So whatever's happening that hour is what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, folks, check it out. Matt, what's happening on TMBS tonight?
We got Matt Karp, Associate Professor of History at Princeton, on to talk about SCOTUS going back to the 1860s and how we need to, define it as an illegitimate institution again. And we also have Luke Mayville on to talk about how to win in rural areas and how not to win in rural areas with regards to expanding things like Medicaid. So that's tonight on patreon.com/TMBS.
And folks can check it. And then Jamie was on your program on last Friday. Is that right? Nomi?
On my show. Yeah. I was like, oh, on everybody's show. That's awesome. She was fantastic. Yes.
Folks should check that out as well. And just a reminder, this program has a longtime sponsor, probably the longest sponsor we've ever had, is a co-op, justcoffee.coop. Fair trade coffee to your chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. And, the only difference I think that you would see as a consumer, let's say, of from justcoffee.coop, well, you wouldn't see any. But the difference in terms of like what it is for your community, what it is, like, for instance, this program, I don't know if this program would be around right now if these guys were not a co-op.
Wow.
Because they were a co-op, because they were the ones who tipped me off to Cernovich sending out fake emails about trying to get me fired. And they would not have done that unless they were like movement people, unless they were like, look, we don't have a board of directors who are going to say like, we're going to run away from that. They're people who have like opinions and don't have an agenda that is just about sort of extracting cash from it. You'd also know it if you were one of their suppliers, because there are times where some of these farms that they get their coffee from in Latin America, there's a drought, there's a hurricane, whatever it is. What these guys do is they say, we will still purchase whatever you have, and we will purchase from you in the future, and we promise we're going to stand by you. And if we have to figure out how to, fill the gaps on our coffee supplies, we will do that. But we have a relationship with you, and that's what is paramount. I mean, that's the difference. That's the value of a co-op. All right. Going to take a quick break, head into the fun half of the program, 646-257-3920. We will take your phone calls and your IMs. See you in the fun half.
In for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
sent us this.
Alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you can imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Almost says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
I am a total cunt.
Can we bring back DJ Dannerky's song, please?
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break for people.
That's fucking nonsense.
Hey, folks, reminder.
I do not have Parkinson's.
And the alpha males are...
Psych. Fuck 'em. Almost says what? Almost says what? Hell of a lot of bank. 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 Hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black. African. And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black.
See Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on! Fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday! Happy birthday to me, Jew boy! I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are back. Africans are black.
Come on! Come on! Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
That is so good.
Hello, no, yeah, so good, isn't it?
I every single time I watch that, there's something new. But there's this one clip of you. It must have been like cable in the 90s. You've got some sort of weird, not goatee. It's like half goatee. It's like filled in goatee. You're growing it out.
Not the 90s.
Early 2000s.
That was no. I mean, it couldn't have been before 2004.
Oh, okay. Well, that's 15 years. So
yeah,
it's
that could have been 10
remarkable.
years ago. That could have been 10 years ago. Yeah. Yeah, there's been some unfortunate things that have happened on my face. No doubt about it. This breaking.
Oh, no.
The top U.S. General Mark Milley, several members of the Joint Chiefs of Staff are quarantining after a top Coast Guard official tested positive for coronavirus.
Oh, my God.
This is several U.S. defense officials tell CNN. So, I mean...
Here we go.
It's just sheer insanity, right? I mean, that's not terribly surprising about any of this. I mean, people should just, listen to what's going on at the White House.
Emptiness?
Well, I mean, everybody has. I mean, I just want to read. Let's just go through some of the quotes, shall we? Yeah. Just from what we're getting from the White House. This is upon Donald Trump's return to the White House. This comes from the Washington Post. The West Wing is a total ghost town, said one official who worked at the White House on Monday. The official, like others, spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss internal dynamics in the building. This is just an array of quotes coming out of the White House, where our government is run. Multiple sources told ABC News that there is a full-blown freakout, that's in quotes, in the administration waiting to see who will be next to test positive, with aides not trusting each other and some trying to find ways to avoid coming into work at all. Sounds sort of like the Majority Report offices. Because we've had, this is a quote, because we've had some cases in the West Wing, more people are working remotely today than in previous days. And that's the way the process is supposed to work. That was according to White House Deputy Press Secretary Brian Morgenstern on Monday afternoon. Of course, there were two staffers in his office that had COVID. Sources added there weren't many staffers in the West Wing Monday afternoon, and there was a lot of regret for not taking the coronavirus more seriously by not wearing masks and social distancing regularly.
Get out.
You know, it's one of those areas where regret's just not going to pay off for you, folks. Can't go backwards when it comes to coronavirus. This is Axios.
This music.
It's insane that he would return to the White House and jeopardize his staff's health when we are still learning of new cases among senior staff. This place is a cesspool. That's a White House source. He was so concerned with preventing embarrassing stories that he exposed thousands of his own staff and supporters to a deadly virus. He's kept us in the dark, and now our spouses and kids have to pay the price. It's just selfish.
Wow, that was a quote?
That's a quote.
That was like the White House chef, who's just the same person always.
Well,
I can't imagine that's a Trump loyalist.
Let me just pause it and put the music back on in a second, because I will tell you this. What that guy doesn't realize, or that woman, whoever gave that quote, look in the mirror.
Yeah.
Because while he's doing this to you now, your enterprise was doing this to the entire country. The White House resident staff members are largely Black and Latino and often elderly. This again from Axios. This is according to Kate Anderson Brower, who compiled a trove of interviews with former staffers for her book, The Residents. The Washington Post reports there are about 90 full-time ushers, butlers, housekeepers, valets, and florists, and engineers and cooks. 2 of those cleaning staff already diagnosed positive. White House correspondent Michael Shear, who tested positive, tells Axios, "My wife now has tested positive for COVID. The collateral damage is going to be pretty significant, I think." And in the coup de grace, Gabriel Sherman reports, according to sources, Don Jr. has told friends that he tried lobbying Ivanka Trump, Eric Trump, and Jared Kushner to convince the president that he needs to stop acting unstable. Don Jr. has said he wants to stage an intervention, but Jared and Ivanka keep telling him telling Trump how great he's doing. One of the sources told Gabriel Sherman, Don Jr. thinks Trump is acting crazy.
The Don Jr. who's had meltdowns on cable news himself? Like if that guy?
To lift a construction of a joke from Eddie Driscoll, who I don't know if people know is a comedian or was. Don Jr. says you've got a problem. You know you've got a problem. And there it is, ladies and gentlemen, your roundup of all the quotes coming out of the White House in the wake of Donald Trump huffing and puffing his way up the steps and essentially blowing everyone in the White House away.
Sam, I mean, what's so crazy to me about this, you already had him, okay, so Manafort, he's already in a predicament with this campaign because he doesn't have his A team. He's like on his F team because the first round went to jail, got indicted, then like the second round quit, got fired, the third round quit, got fired, fourth round, fifth, whatever.
Which is the round where he has ended up committed because he was threatening, he assaulted his wife and had a gun. Which round is that?
D.
That guy, I think, is still like in some type of recovery. But
yeah, that was insane. So here, the White House, the campaign, and now everyone's testing positive. We're like, is anybody steering this ship? The White House and the campaign. I mean, I think they're relying almost exclusively on.
Yeah.
What was that?
Stepien is tested positive. We don't know how well he's doing. He could be fine.
Right. They could be perfectly fine. But is the campaign, I mean, with Biden up so much, and who knows what that means. I mean, he's up in swing states too, but listen, after 2016, I think we're all cautious about that.
Right.
Is it just relying on the GOP's sophisticated voter suppression strategies that they've tested a million different ways? Is that all this campaign is just the party itself running voter suppression?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's I think that's been the strategy for a while now, right? I think they have probably, I would imagine, unless they're just even incompetent at being horrible people, they have isolated the 3 or 4, maybe 5 states that they think there's the best chance for them, if things go sideways with the ballots, for them to wage a court battle, to slow up the electors, whatever it is. And I think that moves forward, right? And
that's it.
They're still
that's literally it at this point. Even the ads. I mean, I was looking at some of the swing district ads, the D-Trip, the red to blue states, and some of the Republicans that they're running against are running like full conspiracy theorist Q, like crazy, crazy in swing districts. What's the strategy there for Republicans? They're not going to win on that message. Maybe in R plus 17 districts, but not against like Tom O'Halloran or any of these.
I mean, I think I think maybe they might be looking and seeing that they're losing even their base support, or they need that, or I don't know. I mean, like when you look at these polls, right? I mean, just in terms of the state polls, right? So you got a Biden up 16 points nationally. That doesn't, that's good, but it's not relevant really in many respects. I don't think there's anybody for months or maybe years who has thought that Donald Trump is going to win the national vote.
Right.
But I do think that there is value in, I've said this multiple times, in Joe Biden racking up the votes against him. What kind of value? Impossible to quantify. Mm-hmm. Greater than 0. Let's put it that way. Could be 0.00001, percent value, but it's greater than 0. In Pennsylvania, he's up by 5 points. He is up by 6 points in Wisconsin. And maybe even more importantly, he's at 50% in both those states. So there's not, there may be 6% undecided, but even if all the undecideds break for Trump, he's over 50%. Yeah. That's really important, as you know. This is up until October 5th. So these polls run through, post-debate and also, maybe not Trump driving around in his limo, but Florida tied 47 to 47%. Arizona tied more or less, Biden 47, Trump 46. Michigan, Biden 49%, Trump 44%. Again, you're very close to 50%, which is where you desperately want to be, I think. North Carolina, 47% to 47%.
Wow.
So what this, suggests is that these things tend to break one way or the other, right? And if they break for Biden, we're looking at like just a massive landslide in these states. But it could break for Trump, or it's possible that we get a couple of states that break for him and a couple that don't. And in those couple that don't, they still are very close. And then it becomes a court case, or then it becomes, the Proud Boys stopping account. There's nothing. I mean, I've never been involved in a run up to an election where the polling seemed so largely irrelevant. I mean, maybe that's an overstatement, but I mean, it's just, I include the polls in my stack of stories today because,
because the movement is still a story. Like the story of how that number went beyond 50 is a story. I mean, I actually thought Biden would be it wouldn't be tied in Arizona. That's actually a concern that that he's not gaining momentum there, given the Mark Kelly, being so far ahead of McSally, and that is one of the key swing states. I don't know. My concern is like, okay, it's tight enough. The swing votes are tight enough in some of these key states that there might be enough votes of those silent, embarrassed Trump supporters, those Republicans who just at the end of the day can't stomach voting for a Democrat no matter what because of a million reasons. Right. And even though they hate Trump, even though they might think he's a racist, they're silent supporters. And it's very hard to quantify that with a million other factors like suppression, et cetera.
Let's go through some of the sound the Republicans had to, and the conservatives and the, Fox TV had to respond to the sheer insanity that Donald Trump represented. I mean, it's their job. They've got to pretend like this is normal. That, and here's Tucker Carlson going even beyond that. Not just normal. It's a sign that this guy's an ubermensch. Or that COVID is really just a big joke. Now, I'll tell you, by all reports that I have read, I don't know if he's doing it today, but the vast majority of Tucker Carlson's broadcasts have been from a studio that he rented, I believe, in a small town way north in Maine. Because COVID's not a big deal. So he goes way, 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 way north to the edge of the country in Maine in a small, small town because COVID's not a big deal. But let's hear him tell us that.
The moment you find yourself rooting for another man's illness or death is the moment you need to stop immediately in your tracks, pause, and take stock of your soul. You're the one who's sick and badly in need of help. You're rotting from within. But the media are not stopping. They're not even pausing. They're too angry. Donald Trump is alive. They were hoping that wouldn't happen. Worse, Trump walked out of the hospital under his own steam after just 3 days. 74 years old, and the virus didn't really slow him down. In fact, he looks fine. These are dangerous facts. If you're allowed to think about them too much, you might draw the wrong conclusions. You might conclude the coronavirus isn't quite as scary as they're telling you it is. You might regret giving up your constitutional...
Can we just make note of the fact that Trump had to make sure that he was in reach of the stairs? Those aren't steep stairs, folks.
Yeah.
Let's just run that back just a little bit. I mean, I just something I picked up. I mean, look, this Ubermensch sometimes they're just gonna not freaking out. I'm not freaking out when I tap my leg and then touch the stairs. I'm not freaking out. Go ahead.
The wrong conclusions. You might conclude the coronavirus isn't quite as scary as they're telling you it is. You might regret giving up your constitutional rights in a panic last spring or letting them destroy the American economy in response. You might find yourself enraged that they're keeping your kids from getting an education and have for 6 months.
Who's they?
And above all, you might stop believing the news media. Why are we watching this crap? It's not news.
Man.
It's propaganda. They're lying to us. We just caught them again. All weekend, they told us Donald Trump was going to die. He had a pre-existing condition called obesity. Trump wasn't merely overweight. He was, quote, clinically obese, grotesquely overweight, sideshow fat. His silhouette blocks the sun. Thanks to decades of...
Now, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's objectively true. I mean, the man is he's just falling outside of us. I mean, he wears I don't even know if he gets men, it's
big and tall warehouse.
Yeah. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, Donald Trump has gained about 40, 50 pounds in office. And I didn't hear any reports saying that he was going to die or that he was grotesquely fat. I mean, I probably said that, but over the weekend I didn't have my show.
Oh, no, that was Reuters.
Oh, was it Reuters? It said he's grotesquely fat?
And that he's going to die.
Oh, is that right?
I'm joking.
I was like, what? I'm like, man, did I miss something?
But here's the thing. Is he in New York? Is Tucker Carlson doing his show from 6th Avenue in Manhattan right now? Or is he doing it from a so far north in Maine that it would take you 8 hours to drive there from here? I mean, who is lying to whom? Tucker Carlson's telling his audience, go out, it's nothing. But that guy is up in his family compound up in Maine, deep, deep, deep in the woods, probably on the coast, I guess, but way north. He's bought his own little studio because he doesn't want to deal with coronavirus. I don't blame him. It's just that he's going on television telling all his older audience, because they're all old. I mean, that's the Fox demo. You know that. Don't worry about it. Go out. It didn't even do anything to Donald Trump.
But Sam, what's so concerning about that is, we've listened to a lot of Tucker. We know Tucker. I have never seen him go that far against the media. Like, he always complains about the media, but he straight up is calling it propaganda, that that COVID is essentially a lie, that it's like a cold. I mean, he is echoing the worst conspiracy theorists online right now that we know and have been deplatformed. He is echoing that on the largest stage, cable news stage, the biggest audience in the country. He is echoing. I didn't mention this, but I went to a Trump rally this weekend.
Ooh.
In Scottsdale, Arizona, and it was, I don't know what I'm allowed to say on your show, but it was a Q Trump rally. I didn't know until I got there.
Q has asked me to tell you not to say that.
Okay, I don't know if you.
What do you mean you don't know what to say? You could say.
I know you might be. They're like I don't know, YouTube. I don't know if it affects the algorithm, but no. Okay. Anyways,
no, I don't care.
Okay, great,
I'm
perfect.
Hear this.
So I went to this rally. I was having breakfast and it literally popped up across the street, and there were maybe like 250 people eventually. And I decided to go across the street and ask them questions while I waited for a table and having brunch. See, you can't have brunch and be an activist at the same time, guys. So what was that?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So, I mean, I just asked them questions like, where do you get your news from? And immediately they're on defense. Immediately, they criticize left-wing media and they say that's, all the stuff that you know. But it was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. It's on our YouTube channel. You can go to the Nomiki show on YouTube and you'll see some of the clips. But everything from questioning whether he was actually sick. This is just like the cold. I mean, all the stuff that you know. But then to hear Tucker Carlson literally use the same talking points as the Q members at the rally. That's what concerns me.
They got it from that network 9 months ago, 6 months ago.
No, but they don't watch Fox News. They don't watch Fox News. They don't trust it. That is too mainstream for them. It's corporate media. Q, it's real right-wing news, as they said in some other report that I've never heard of. Who's driving Fox News right now? What's going on over there?
Lugan Press, Matt's exactly. It's I mean, it's incredibly dangerous for the country. It just shows an intense, just like cravenness and disregard. It's disgusting. It really is disgusting. Mm-hmm. Although I will say this, that my first reaction when I did hear the reports of Trump catching COVID and heading to the hospital was that we don't know what's going to happen. We can only know that Q works in very mysterious ways. And,
that was the best part. They said
Q has a reason for everything.
He literally, one of the Q guys goes, "Oh, he's been talking. Trump signaled to us that he was going to take 10 days off at some point." I was like, well, why right before the election, though? I mean, don't you think he wants to get out there and do he's doing rallies. All of his surrogates are going to do rallies. They have an answer for everything.
Well, I mean, distance does make the heart grow fonder, right? And familiarity breeds contempt. So maybe 10 days off before the election, not a bad idea. I mean, to a certain extent, it's worked for Biden. So Biden's favorables have gone up this year. I mean, that's when you compare to 2016, which was like both their favorables were like this. Biden's favorables have gone up. And I think it's just, sometimes distance is nice. So Tucker Carlson's not the only person who is trying to desperately spin. Now, Tucker Carlson's up there basically saying that we have a lying press and can't believe anything they say about COVID and whatnot. But on Fox and Friends, they're not going to go that far. Steve Doocy is just too nice. He's always looking for the bright side. What was it from the message that Donald Trump gave when he came out and basically said, COVID, you can beat it. Don't worry about it. The flip side of that is if you died, you were weak, 200,000 of you died, whatever. But Steve Ducey's always looking for the bright side. Here he is on Fox and Friends.
Well, you know, he did say be careful, which is key, because there are people who are vulnerable and they can't go out.
He's vulnerable.
He is vulnerable, and he got it. There's somebody in my family who was told by their doctor yesterday that if they got COVID, they would die, given the comorbidities of that person's life. And that is the fact of life. 210,000 people have died in the United States so far from this, 700 people a day. And what he did right there is the cover of the New York Post. Here it is right here. Defiant Trump removes mask after release from hospital. Face off. Well,
oh my God.
After he did that, that just led to the outrage, which we've been hearing all along anyway.
I mean, how could, you know, like I feel like poor Steve Ducey is going to have like some type of like aneurysm. I mean, he's trying to reconcile this thing that he has a member of his family who is very vulnerable to this, who the doctor has said, taking Steve Ducey's word for it, if you get COVID, you will probably die. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, he's out there, has to professionally make a case that the president is acting responsibly. So the best he can do is say, hey, I mean, he lists 210,000 dead.
Yep.
Hundreds of new cases a day. Hundreds of new deaths a day, rather. Thousands of new cases, 50,000 new cases a day practically now. But he said, be careful. And I think we should be really thankful for that. The president really cares. He said, be careful. I mean, when he took his mask off.
Don't attack the supreme leader. You might lose your job.
I mean, honestly, I almost feel bad for Ducey. I really almost do. Like, dude, like, do we need to do a GoFundMe to pay for your kids' college so that you can go off and like live your life in a way that feels more, you know, like you're not every day? Like, I mean, can you imagine having to go in and earn your paycheck by basically saying, my family member, they like have to be terrified to go out because the best the president can do is to not be careful, but then say, be careful.
Be careful.
I mean,
he's like, now, I can't believe I'm even saying this. Like Shepard Smith used to say that, you know, in his most unguarded moments, that he was doing it because he wanted to make sure that accurate information got through on Fox News, even if it was only a third of the normal audience. It was enough that they were at least getting some real news. And then he quit, of course. I feel like that's kind of, this is the Steve Ducey's moment to just infect the most brainwashed people in America, not the most brainwashed, but some of the most brainwashed, leave that to Q, with like a little bit of truth. Like, oh yes, 210,000 people did die. It's not a conspiracy. The liberal news isn't making that up. You might actually know someone. I know somebody who could be. And that's his moment. That's his service to America right now. He deserves an award for this.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
I'm joking.
But he does deserve at least, I think, some sympathy. I mean, I feel a little bit bad for him.
You're such a neo-lib, God.
What, for feeling sympathy?
You get an MSNBC show and suddenly you're like, I feel bad for the Republican. Oh, come on.
Not the Republican, just to Steve Ducey. Just Steve Ducey. We should tell you, I had this here. Right now, I think COVID is the number 3 cause of death in the country for this year. Now, of course, the year's not over, but already number 3 cause of death this year. You know, like people won't say like cancer's a joke. People don't say car crashes are a joke. But the president said careful.
Yeah.
The president said careful. Poor Steve Ducey. Poor Steve Ducey. Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 308 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello.
Hello.
This is Kowalski from Nebraska.
Kowalski from Nebraska. What's happening in in Nebraska?
Well, COVID cases are at the second worst they've been all year. So actually, that was partially what I wanted to talk about. So I recently talked to one of the county commissioners in the area. He is a lifelong Republican, not a big fan of BLM or same-sex marriage or anything like that. But he does really, really detest our governor for not taking COVID seriously. So I would say there's a mixed bag of people out here.
Interesting. All right, fair enough. What else you got?
And I also just wanted to make a comment on the person yesterday who was talking about my view on the Electoral College. I would also agree that, the whole awarding the popular vote, that state compact thing would be great. But I also think it wouldn't work because just a handful of states could back out whenever and there'd be no negative repercussions. So until you actually have a plurality of the states willing to get rid of the Electoral College, I think your better bet is just focus on winning over smaller states to get a greater electoral impact.
Well, I think you can chew gum and walk at the same time, but good point. Appreciate the call.
Hold on, before I go, there's one last thing I would like to say. I disavow radical evangelicals.
All right.
This is a weird political statement I need to make because people want everyone to disavow radical Islam. So, since radical evangelicals are the most dangerous people in North America, I disavow. There we go.
So noted.
Well, have a good day.
Appreciate that. A lot of people have been waiting for that, Kowalski. Appreciate you doing that. Calling from a 210 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Good afternoon, Sam. This is John from San Antonio.
John!
2 in a row. Look at that.
How are you? What's happening, John?
Yeah, President Super Spreader says he's going to be at the debate in Miami in 9 days. So I haven't heard any mail-in voting disinformation since President Super Spreader got COVID, but that'll probably change soon. So most political analysts think that the 1-2 punch of President Super Spreader rude behavior at the debate and his reckless disregard for taking precautions in the middle of a pandemic will put President Super Spreader in a deep hole that will make it extremely hard for him to recover from. So I was just wondering, you were talking about some of the numbers. What numbers were you referring to? What is your source for these numbers?
Which numbers are you talking about?
Well, you're talking about state state polls.
Reuters Ipsos poll.
Okay, so you're basing it on one poll. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Jeez, Sam, come on.
No, I know you need a rolling average. I was just announcing new polls that came out.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, they're basically always use internet polls, and so they always have a tendency to go towards the cult of Trump or Republican Party or whatever you prefer. So boomer voters, can change their minds very quickly, and we saw that in the 2016 Clinton-Trump election, and in this year's Democratic primaries after Bernie won in Nevada. President Super Spreader path is about the same as I called in 2 weeks ago, which is hold Arizona, where Biden's up by 4.1. Hold Florida, where Biden's up by 2.7. Hold North Carolina, where Biden's up by 1.3, and hold Pennsylvania, where Biden's up by 6.3. So, and he also has to win where his margins were relatively high in 2016, like Georgia, where Biden's up by 1.1, Ohio, where Trump's up by 0.3, Iowa, where Trump's up by 0.5, and Texas, where he's up by 2.3. So there would have to be a larger polling area than there was in the 2016 election. But so giving President Super Spreader about a 20% chance to win is about right. So in my opinion. So Democrats are definitely doing better in Senate races. Recently, Nate Silver put up his model, and I can usually find flaws with it, and then within a matter of minutes. The Senate model that gave the cult of Trump super spreaders way too much credit. The fundamentals are changing in red states, and he's overemphasizing incumbency. So the initial Senate model gave the Democrats a 58% chance of them winning the Senate, while I gave him initially a 67%. Now he's up to 63, and I'm up to 73. So most of the Democratic candidates are very conservative, and we've spoken about this over the past year and a half. And I hope most of them get primaried in 2026. But for now, let's vote for the candidates. We'll instill the least amount of damage. So, with Democrats, you got Mark Kelly up by 8.6 in Arizona, Hickenlooper up by 7 points in Colorado, Cal Cunningham up by 5.6 in North Carolina, Sarah Gideon up by 5 points in Maine. And that's the tipping point race if Biden wins. And I'm already acknowledging a Doug Jones loss in Alabama. So the biggest change in any senatorial race in the last few weeks concerns the Georgia special election, where Democrat Reverend Raphael Warnock has surged to the top. Well, while Warnock does not support Medicare for All and the Green New Deal, Bernie Sanders did endorse him. So he's ahead of cult of Trump accolades, Kelly Loeffler and Doug Collins. There were 21 people running in the race.
What about Lieberman?
He's far down. Warnock has all the momentum going with him.
Good.
So
but he's got to get over 50, right, to avoid a runoff?
No, he's not going to do that. He's at 26.2. So there's going to be another election on the 5th of January. So Loeffler's at 24 and Konst is at 20.8. So there's one potential. There's only one potential runoff poll between Warnock and Loeffler. Like I said, I think it's on January 5th, and Warnock was up by 10 points in that poll.
Wow.
So you played a good clip of the WNBA Atlanta Dream players, wearing Warnock for Senate T-shirts a while back, and I think it was in early. Anyway, so Loeffler,
Now, are you suggesting, John, that my playing that clip in some way broke this race open for Warnock?
And I think Georgia has been trending more towards Democrats than any other state in the last month, both in the presidential election and in the Senate races. So, it didn't hurt. But, she made all these disparaging remarks about, Black Lives Matter, the movement, in early July, after the protest. And so that's when all that started. And so that was just the reaction to Loeffler's initial reaction.
Right.
So in Iowa, Teresa Greenfield's up by 3.7 over Joni Ernst. In 2016, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham said, if we were referring to the Republican Party nominee Trump, we will get destroyed and we will deserve it. In 2014,
it's a little bit.
I know people always say I sound like Lindsey Graham, so I don't know. That's not a good sign.
People always say that.
So he said he won his senatorial race by 14 pounds. Now he's only up by 0.2%. 0.2, not
well,
2%,
you know what they just did? They made it harder for people to absentee vote in South Carolina. The Supreme Court did. Just gave them, you will need to have a witness validate your absentee ballot. Now, I don't know if you need, a doctor to make it clear, but to randomly have another person around you to watch you sign the ballot, it just sort of adds to the difficulty, but that's what they're doing. I imagine that Lindsey Graham is that's going to, when you're in a race with 0.05% or whatever it is, difference between you and your opponent, literally every little bit helps. And that's certainly going to help. Well, John, I appreciate the update. We're going to hear more from you, I imagine, in the coming weeks. And of course, we will hear from you on Election Day, maybe multiple times.
All right. Thank you. I'd appreciate that. Thank you, Sam.
I would appreciate it. Thank you, John.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Take care.
Okay.
All right.
There we go. John from San Antonio, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see. Take some IMs, shall we, Nomi?
Sure.
Here we go. DMV Mike. Was Trump dominated by the steps or by COVID? Assy McGee. Sam, Virgil mentioned that you were encouraging people to vote in all 50 states. How he thought that made sense. Not that he agreed, but that he understood why. I thought that was kind of cool. Yeah, look, you can argue, I think, you can argue that it's not, even if Biden gets 10 million votes as opposed to 3 million votes more than Trump, or, whatever, pick the numbers you want, that it's not going to make a difference, that the courts are completely insulated from public opinion, and Republican officials in Pennsylvania are completely insulated from public opinion, and the media is completely insulated from public opinion. You can argue that. I just disagree. And I think that, like, why not? Like, it ain't going to cost me anything. Like, if there was like, I am desperate to get to the 5% threshold in New York State for the blankety blank party, or, but there isn't anything like that is even remotely relevant in my mind. And so, yes, I would encourage people to vote in red states, in blue states, in purple states for Biden at this point, because I really do think that there is a greater than zero. I'm not gonna even say 1%, but I do think there's a greater than 0% chance that it will influence perhaps a decision that may impact the outcome of the election.
Interesting.
I mean, that's,
Why is that? Like,
I wonder if, let me put it this way. If Al Gore had beat George W. Bush by 10 million votes in the country, and that, I don't know if the Supreme Court would have taken that case in that day. And this is an extreme example, because obviously the Supreme Court was not as movement conservative as it is today. Al Gore was not going to get 10 million more votes than George Bush, but he only got 500,000, and that was really, that came in late. I think that for someone like Sandra Day O'Connor, the idea that Al Gore won 10 million votes and we're going to stick our face in this election in Florida, and maybe we shouldn't do that. It's possible that wouldn't have impacted it, but I think it's a rational argument to believe that it would. That's an extreme example, but we don't know at this point. One of two things are going to happen. Joe Biden's going to blow him out, or there's going to be a couple of key locations. And by key locations, I mean like down to a county, where voting's not going to happen, or gets messed up, that is going to create a cascading impact of decisions that are going to have to be made all the way through. Right. We stop counting in this, Maricopa County. We stopped counting because the Proud Boys stopped us from counting, whatever it is. I'm just, throwing ideas around. Then a state judge makes a determination as to whether counting continues or not. Maybe they decide it doesn't. Then there is how will we pick the electors? Another set of decisions. Each individual who's got to make that decision to vote for an elector that maybe not be represented by the vote. Then it's got to go to Congress. Maybe it goes to the Supreme Court in between. There's, just in that scenario, there's 4 or 5 major decisions that need to be made by individuals. And
just those cases, if they do go to the Supreme Court, it's not one case. It's like multiple cases in which they're going to have to collectively they're human. They're going to have to take that into consideration in the weight of the moment.
And it could be a state. There could be on any one of these statewide elections, for those electoral votes, there could be any number, 4, 10 major decision points that are made by human beings. And one of the things that they look around are going to be like, can I get away with this? How disruptive will this decision, how close of a call is it that I can do this? If Joe Biden is up by 10 million votes, that is going to weigh. It may not weigh heavily on every one of those decision points, but on one of them it could. And that's
and it could impact
anyway.
Yeah. And it's a good out for these conservative justices as well. If there's one decision that is a little bit more clear cut than the others, that one decision could determine the outcome. If it's one county in XYZ state where,
And I mean, just imagine, I don't know, it's not possible, but there's 20 million more people vote for Biden than Trump and he becomes president. And you are in a position of decision-making authority to make that happen. You've got to be completely oblivious as to the implications of that and what's going to happen to this country in that event. So, I mean, that's my argument.
And the other aspect of this too, just for folks who do want to be hyperlocal, you talk about investing in rural states. You talk about it, Democrats investing in Republican states. Well, if we show up in those states and vote, even if it's an R+16 or whatever, it shows the party just how much closer it actually is.
Yes.
They throw them away because they don't invest in their votes, but now's an opportunity, whether they invested in you or not, that you can show that it's worth investing in Nebraska.
Exactly. Congressional baseball fan, Sam, while some people might make jokes about your age, everyone should keep in mind that today you are still younger than RBG was in 1993 when Bill Clinton appointed her to the Supreme Court. Also, it's pronounced just like Noma Garcia Parra. Instead, it's Nomiki Konst. Hope that helps.
I was like, where are we going with this?
P word. Nomiki, when you interviewed those Trump supporters in Arizona, were you scared for your safety at all?
Okay.
And they seemed extremely angry and volatile. Nomiki.
Yes. So the full video is not up on YouTube yet. Just pieces are. I have to make sure to say that. But we're going to put the full video up after today's show. So you definitely can see the 10-minute unedited version. There's this moment where I was, I was wrong in this because of information we learned later. But this was on Saturday morning in Scottsdale. And we... the news hadn't really come out with like how serious it was about Trump yet. They knew that he was going to Walter Reed. The osteopath had just admitted that, Trump was a patient at Walter Reed and that there was a conversation about whether or not Pence was going to take position. The media wasn't even clear on it. So I went to them and I said, he's incapacitated. And they said, no, are you incapacitated when you go to sleep? And I said, well, how do you feel about him being incapacitated? He's not incapacitated. He's fine. He just did a rally. When did he do a rally? Oh, hours ago. What are you talking about? And all of these Trump supporters started circling me. And they would get straight up in my face, and I would back away into my face. None of them are wearing any masks, but they started to herd towards me and start screaming at me. And there were these guys that were above. I did feel if I didn't have my camera out and if we weren't on a public street and if there weren't people across the street like all kind of watching too, I would have felt a little bit more unsafe. I mean, I got out of there as soon as I could because it did shake me up.
Wow.
Yeah.
CBS, that sounds scary, frankly. CBS is reporting that AG Bill Barr has tested negative today for COVID-19, bringing his total to 5 negative test results since his attendance at the ACB Rose Garden event. Wow.
Man.
If
only there was one person. Come on.
That guy not catch it.
Someone cough in his face. What?
Weird that he was self-quarantining after 4 negative tests.
Well, he was exercising caution because that's what he does.
Kayleigh McEnany had 4 consecutive negative tests last week before her 5th test was positive. That's why we keep quarantining the full 14 days. There you go. All right.
True.
Dr. Eric from New Jersey. Prediction. A White House leaker will tell a New York Times reporter that Trump was COVID plus a while ago, yelled toward Biden during the debate on purpose, hoping some droplets would reach him. White House hedged. Maybe they'd luck out. He'd have no symptoms and they'd hide it. And when he got sick, they pretended they just found out. That is not a scenario that I would discount. Let's put it that way.
I just don't think he wants to be off the trail, though. I'm not playing this game of conspiracy over this. Yeah. There's no reason.
No. He's not saying that he wasn't sick.
Yeah, but he would still, that he's been sick for a while. Then why would he go to Walter Reed for 2 days? Even if you were sick for a while.
I think he got too sick. It's one thing to be infected. It's another to actually get the symptoms, right? I think that's the argument. I don't know if that's true, but TMBS is my jam. Sam, as a proud member of the Mike Cernovich Can Kiss My Ass Club, I just wanted to let everyone know that in North Carolina, after the regular voter registration deadline of Friday, October 9th, 2020, which is next week, North Carolina residents can register and vote in person at one-stop sites during the early voting period. This is very important, folks. which runs from Thursday, October 15th, 2020 to Saturday, October 31st. Get out and vote. And by the way, 386,300 absentee ballots have been cast as of yesterday. That seems like a lot.
Wow.
Paper. Oh. Nomiki pronunciation guide. I said it right?
No.
Say no?
No. It's on the screen. It's not Noma. It's
Nomiki.
me. Nomiki. Nomiki.
Nomiki.
Nomiki. You do this thing where you make it a mutt in between. Oh my God, Sam.
Nomiki. Nomiki. Did I do it right?
Do you speak another language?
I mean, not really.
That's okay. Yeah.
I mean, I can do some pidgin like kin cow.
No, me, ki.
No, me.
No. Perfect.
But how come I got to say it faster than that.
Yeah, then it's Nomiki.
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 How's that
I think this is mass. This is mass whole language coming through. I think it's a Massachusetts thing.
I really hope it is.
God, this is like incredibly embarrassing. I apologize.
It's actually hilarious to me.
Juggernaut Magnum. Why you got to treat Tony Orlando and Don like that, dog? Akron, I felt proud when I saw that Peacock intro, Sam. Congratulations. That picture looks hilarious, by the way. It sort of does. I've never, ever. Bronze Plan, how would you respond to the claim that we shouldn't raise corporate tax rates? Instead, we should only increase personal tax rates. Asking with regard to California's Proposition 15 on the ballot, which raises commercial property taxes. Well, commercial property taxes are different than corporate tax rates anyways. I mean, I don't know. I'd have to read into that. I mean, I don't have a problem. I guess it just depends on sort of like how you would broadly structure things, but I have no problem like doing, personal income taxes. I would want them to be confiscatory at one point. But
then, I mean,
but property taxes are different because if you're making money and creating, like, there's a one-to-one relationship with those commercial properties in terms of, well, maybe not one-to-one, but maybe it's even greater than one, in terms of the services you're acquiring from the locality. You're doing a lot of business. Maybe trucks are coming into your place, and we got to pay for those roads.
Mm-hmm.
And what I really don't like is the externalizing of costs onto society for your profits.
That's right. Well, this is the whole Amazon situation. Sure, you could tax Jeff Bezos more income tax, but he wanted to put his headquarters in Long Island City, disrupt a neighborhood, pay zero in taxes, that's the tax break there, right, for that commercial property, and not do anything to invest in the neighborhood. And of course, the neighborhood's, completely gentrified and more expensive, and all these condos go up, and the subway still doesn't work.
Getting so many people now telling me how to pronounce your name.
Oh my God.
Ty from Tennessee. The only way this stunt by Trump would have worked is if he took hydroxychloroquine or a Clorox IV drip. Miracle cure for thee, but not for me. Indeed. I apparently didn't take any hydro. Here is Rudy Giuliani.
Oh my
God. I don't even know how to do this. This is Rudy Giuliani. I mean, this is sad. We've all seen this type of, well, not we all, but some of us have seen this in the context of, like, their personal relationships with people. You see people really, really losing it. And here it is on TV, on Fox. Here's Rudy Giuliani with Martha McClellan.
Now that he's busy tweeting campaign messages, I would ask him to do this. Listen to the scientists. Support masks.
What would you say to Joe Biden there?
Well, I would say to Joe that you don't really understand what scientists are. First of all, listen to your doctors, that's for sure. They know your personal history. Doctors really aren't scientists. When they're scientists, almost always have competing opinions. That's what science is about. Science isn't a didactic, dogmatic religion. So, there's almost every principle of this kind of science
Pause it for
medical
1 second.
science.
Pause it for 1 second. I just want to remind you that the question was, what do you think about Joe Biden saying wear masks? Listen to the scientists, wear masks. Rudy Giuliani is now talking about the nature of science. I want to remind you because it's been almost 20 seconds since the question was asked, so you may have forgotten because Rudy is already in go ahead.
Almost every principle of this kind of science, medical science, has conflicting opinions. And for example, it isn't science to be wearing that mask, Joe, when you're giving a speech and the people are 30 or 40 feet away from you. The only thing you can infect when you're doing that is a teleprompter that's closer to you. So I see through you. I mean, that's a political statement to scare people wearing that mask. You do not need that mask when you're standing on a podium and nobody is within half a football field of you.
Well, he didn't have his mask on the other night at the debate, and I would imagine that
nobody put it on. But he put it on. But he put it on the other day, giving a speech where the closest person to him was probably 100 yards, and the thing was almost up to his eyes. That's political theater, Martha. That's not science.
I hear what you're saying, but just to play devil's
science.
advocate, he'd probably say, well, I haven't gotten COVID, and the president did, and he's not a big fan of wearing masks. I mean,
well, I haven't either, and I don't wear masks as much as probably I should. And I haven't gotten COVID either, and a lot of people on both sides.
Wait a second, pause for 1 second. Now, wait a second. First of all, I am quite convinced that there's at least social science that when a leader gets up and wears a mask during a speech, he is encouraging others to wear a mask. He doesn't necessarily need it in that moment, but he is functioning not as an individual in society. He is functioning as a leader of a country or a would-be aspirational leader of a country. And he is projecting out, I am modeling behavior that people should follow. And I am doing something that may be overly cautious so that you get the message that that is a good thing to do for public health. And then Giuliani goes on to say, he's wearing a mask more than I do. I should probably wear it more. Wait,
but then he says it's politics. He says it's politics. It's political theater. This is all about politics. He is the one who makes it a partisan issue.
Right. It is political insofar as that we're talking about public health and we're trying to how do we convince people to adopt measures that are healthy for them?
Yeah.
So and then he goes on to admit that he's not wearing his mask as much as he should be. Bang, 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 bang. All right, good. What an idiot.
And I haven't gotten COVID either, and a lot of people on both sides of that.
I mean,
what they claim is science is nonsense. For example, in my city and many cities, they allow Black Lives Matter protests without masks, with everybody right next to each other. But they don't allow legitimate parades.
Huh?
Well, you're telling me it's good science to allow protests?
Well, there's a lot of things that haven't been allowed that
a
lot of us feel should be allowed, and the lockdowns should end in a more forceful way than they have.
But they're the ones claiming they...
Oh, my God. Martha McClellan can barely... I think if you ask Joe Biden, do you think the scientists would say that you should wear a mask while you're giving that speech to protect the other people there? And you go, well, no, but I'm doing it to project the idea that people should wear masks.
Mm-hmm.
My God.
And then he turns into race.
I think Rudy doesn't even really I can't even figure out who does he think he's talking to?
I think he's high. I literally think he's high on something. He was all over the place.
He was a little bit all over the place, but he did get to the essence of what science is, and that's important.
And it's that Democrats only want science for the white supremacists, not for the activists. That's what
Martha McClellan seemed a little bit irritated with him, didn't she?
Sort of. And then at the end, when he blamed BLM, she was like, okay, that's my safe space. I can talk about that a little bit.
Now we can do that. Yeah. Here is
next up on Fox News. Should doctors wear masks when they're giving abortions?
I find I'll tell you something. The reason why we're doing so many of these Fox News clips is that this is, like you said earlier, this is the biggest cable news outlet. They are getting the amount of misinformation that is being pumped out there is just, astonishing. And so much of this country now is driven, not the majority of it, but so many people are driven by misinformation. And this is just one sort of like node, I guess. Fox News is now just one node of this misinformation, but it is the most prominent one, and it disseminates it out and it absorbs it in. And I don't know if you were to drop Fox out of the mix, that a lot of these other things would sort of fall apart. I'm not sure, but
I would say so. I mean, this is why I get frustrated about the Joe Rogan stuff without going down a rabbit hole of Joe Rogan. It's a large, yes, he's making money off of it, bringing in all the audiences. And so does Fox News. But Fox News has made money off of a more muted, less like conspiratorial right-wingism, which is dangerous and really turned so many Democrats in the late 90s all the way to today. But right now it's reached another level. And like, I hate to even say, there used to be some sort of editorial limits at Fox. And it just, some. There were. They would kick people off, believe it or not. The people that they have on now.
Right. Well, I mean, here's a guy.
That's the danger, though.
About, like the history of Americans, like, demanding. I wonder if this guy said this during, and Sanders was really attacked viciously for not releasing every detail of his heart attack within, I think, 2 or 3 days. And most of it came out by then, and it turned out that he was, in fact, everybody was like, "Is this real?" Well, it turns out he was fine. He came back, actually seemed to have more better than he was before. But at the time, you're like, we have questions, we want to know, and people are going to vote for this guy for office. Here is a Fox News medical guest who has an interesting perspective on how what Americans should, what Americans have a right to know about the guy who got his finger literally, or his hand, on the nuclear button.
Matt, we don't know the president's lung condition. That's what people were questioning. And I did find out if the president wanted everyone to know his lung condition, he could release that information. Right?
I understand that, but I also think there's an excessive, lurid interest in the details of the president's health. It is sufficient for us to see this president can walk into a helicopter, come out of a helicopter, go up to the steps. He can speak in full sentences. He's seen very closely on camera. There are no signs of respiratory distress. He hasn't coughed once on camera. And we have confidence not only in Dr. Conley, who's very carefully selected and trained, and the brilliant doctors at Walter Reed, but Dr. Brian Garibaldi, the director of ICU at Hopkins, who's one of the world authorities in COVID right now. We trust their judgment. American physicians are amongst the best trained in the world. This person, the president, is a very important patient, as are all of our patients. So we need to have confidence, and I won't pander to the media hysteria on wanting every atom of detail on the president's health. It has no bearing. Right. He's functioning well, and that's sufficient for us.
I mean, it's not like people are saying, like, does this guy have, like, I don't know, ED or something. They're not trying to find out, like, how much does he weigh? Like, how fat is he? No, they're just trying to find out, like, was this guy on oxygen? How close? Like, when you're on oxygen, that means that there's no oxygen going through your body. And one of the things in your body is your brain. And so if you're not getting oxygen to your brain, do we still want that person in charge of starting a nuclear war? Mm-hmm. I mean, the idea that this is lurid, that we shouldn't know what drugs he's taking, where, a lot of these drugs reportedly have mental impact on you, when we are getting reports that even his son is saying, like, dad's acting crazy. Like, I mean, seriously? Do you really go on television and say it's lurid for the American public to even be interested in this?
It's a national security issue. I mean, you already have, like, multiple international things escalating. He could decide to, like, bomb Azerbaijan or something tomorrow, for all we know.
Meanwhile, here's Joe Biden. I want to get your take on this, because a lot of people, I don't know, people were a little bit upset about this Joe Biden clip. I mean, I mean, this is, I don't know. I want to get your take on this. This is Joe Biden. He is at a town hall on MSNBC, and he's being asked about being a socialist.
Left. I look like a socialist. Look, I'm the guy that ran against the socialists. Remember, I got in trouble during the whole campaign. 20-some candidates. Joe Biden was too centrist, too moderate, too straightforward. That was Joe Biden. I have taken on the very people that, in fact, we're worried about. I've taken on the Castros of the world. I've taken on the Putins of the world. I've taken on all these dictators. I haven't cozied up to them. I'm the guy that's been straightforward with them. I'm the guy that let them know it stops here. It stops with me. It stops with me as president. I am no more a socialist than or a communist than Donald Trump is. Well, I won't say it. Anyway. So they need not worry. Just look at the record. There's not one single syllable that I've ever said that could lead you to believe that I was a socialist or a communist.
I have no problem with him saying, like, look, I'm a centrist. I'm not a socialist. I'm a centrist. I mean, because that's what he is. And that's what the Democrats voted for. But when he equates being a socialist, like the ones he beat in the primary, to Castro and Putin. I mean, that is.
That's where you cut Joe's mic and you give him a script.
I mean, honestly, like that is just. Well, it's embarrassing.
I mean, Bernie's out there campaigning for him right now in person, risking his well-being.
Yeah,
exactly. The least you could do is not compare him to Vladimir Putin.
Exactly.
I mean, if I'm challenging Biden, a little bit dangerous right now to do so, but if you don't like socialists, then do you not want Bernie's help? Because you can't have it both ways.
Well,
you shouldn't have it both ways.
I have no problem him saying I'm not a socialist, because he's not. And we should know the guy is a centrist. And that's where that's who he is. He is a centrist. He is not going to change anything. That's what he's arguing. But the idea that he has to equate that, I find to be really offensive. I mean, it's just offensive.
And that was MSNBC, right? I didn't check. Okay, so it's not like he's on Fox or CNN trying to win over some centrists or Republicans that are on the fence. You're literally on MSNBC.
I mean, I'm not convinced that a lot of those people on MSNBC don't want him to be not a socialist. But
without a doubt,
yeah, that these people think that a socialist means Castro or Putin. I mean, this is part of the problem with Joe Biden as a candidate is that he isn't super adept when it comes to expressing himself. Right? I'm as much of a socialist as Donald Trump is. I can't come up with an analogy, so I'm going to pretend like it's something I can't say on television. Yeah. That's what that was. Which, okay, good. It's a nice save. It's like, actually, I'm going to play off my inability to come up with an analogy on my feet with, I'm actually just too much of a gentleman to say it.
Meanwhile, Bernie Sanders and Putin, same thing.
I just think that, yes, that is... the other danger, and to be honest with you, it is not his lack of verbal and rhetorical agility has not inhibited him on the general election campaign. But that type of stuff,
yeah,
I mean, he's not doing himself any favors there, and he's not doing us any favors. Not just because, I don't think the left should be equated with Castro or Putin or dictators, but because you're offending people, and why? I think if he would take it back, he would take it back. But I
don't think he would, because first off, he's done this multiple times, and the Democrats have done this multiple times. And I think what this reveals is that the Democratic Party and the establishment has spent the majority of their energy of the last 5 years obsessing over how to kill a working class, left-leaning movement that eating the party from the ground up. And it's been an obsession on their minds. And now you have a situation in which this is when Democrats win, generally speaking. The Republicans are extremely unpopular, and they literally can just coast through. So instead of spending all of their time thinking about this dictator who is in office right now, he cannot hold back because they're sitting in their little echo on conference calls with each other, listening to Rahm Emanuel give them the right talking points about how Joe Biden has to win the debate. And they can't even put a filter on to think maybe, just maybe, we need them to beat this dictator because they don't know how to actually win against Republicans. They only know how to fix elections to kill movements. That's it.
Yeah, it's really, I mean,
we're doing all we can right now, Sam. Look at us. We're sitting here talking about that. We are doing it, and they just spit in our faces. I would love someone to ask Jill Biden if she feels this way, because I have a feeling she's like not one to act. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but
I just think that it's just it's stupid politics. I think it does reveal, what is, I mean, look, the fact of the matter is, I'm part of a movement, a party, or whatever, a disposition that wants to beat Joe Biden. I'm not going to be able to do it right now because there's no election as to whether he's the nominee. He's the nominee. We lost that election. And I'm going to try and beat him legislatively or push him or however you want to phrase it. So I don't, it doesn't bother me that they have this type of disdain for the left. But I think it's just a huge mistake because, I have the same disdain for Rahm Emanuel. Right. I mean,
he was on that post-debate stage with Chris Christie, and it's the first thing I thought of when Chris Christie got COVID.
I'm not gonna lie. Like Rahm Emanuel, I think he's it's just silly to say he's like Putin or Castro or like he's like I don't know, Jair Bolsonaro or something like that. But I think he's bad. I think he's a bad person. I think his agenda is bad. I think it's bad. And by measuring that, like how much human suffering his decisions cause and amongst whom in particular. But as a political matter, it's just stupid politics to do right now and unnecessary. That's just what it is. And on some level, it's also good to know that, like, look, this is what you're up against. And so, you take that and you go back and you say, okay, what's the talking points? When they start to deploy this, when we start, what are the talking points? What are the political machinations? And one of the good things about, I don't know, just the Putin thing is just so stupid.
And it's actually giving the Republicans ammunition. It's one thing to criticize the left and you want to distance yourself. I'm not a socialist, whatever. It's another thing to have the Democratic nominee talking about its base in many key demographics as aligning with Putin. And then the Republicans are going to say, but you thought we were. So who do you think we're, Tulsi Gabbard's not really helping either, but like.
Right. No, it's ridiculous. it's just absolutely ridiculous. All right, this is the last call we got for the day, folks. I'm sorry. We just, how it goes around here. We got a lot of callers. This person been hanging on for 75 minutes.
Ooh.
Calling from a 908 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam. This is Connor from New Jersey.
Connor from New Jersey. What's on your mind, Connor?
Well, first of all, I just want to say I'm a pretty recent listener. I only heard about you guys after hearing about Michael's passing. And I think you'd be happy to know that you guys got me off my Jimmy Dore gum juice almost instantly.
Wow. That was quick. Well, that's appreciate it. What was it that you enjoyed about Jimmy Dore? Or what was it that what was it about that juice that was so such sugar to you?
Well, I think part of it was that I got into him around, I want to say March, and that was just when coronavirus was exploding and the CARES Act was, as everyone knows, pretty much a failure. in a lot of ways, and I think he tapped into a lot of my like frustration with the Democratic Party. And I think it was just kind of this like dopamine rush of hating like politics and DC in general. But I realized a few months later when I'm like, wait a minute, he's only hating on the Democrats, and he says about this. This is kind of strange. And the comment sections were flooded with Trump supporters, and a lot of people like, you know, I'm a conservative, but I kind of like this guy.
Interesting.
So I already had kind of like a primer for like more intelligent analysis, and like hearing you guys talk, I'm like, oh wow, these people are smart. This is a nice change of pace.
Well, thank you. All of that is very flattering and interesting too. I appreciate the call.
Well, actually, that I do want to talk about. That wasn't the reason I called it.
All right. Well, in that case, you buttered me up. So go ahead.
Exactly. But I want to talk about colleges and universities with COVID, and less so all these like failures that we've been hearing, and more so what it takes for a college to be successful. And so I recently graduated from Williams College, which is a very small liberal arts college in Berkshire County.
Yep.
And it is very just like isolated. So it's already primed to be a good place to actually have students on campus.
This is in Western Massachusetts, right?
Yes, exactly. It's in Williamstown. It's right by Vermont and New York. It's extremely isolated. It's a pretty large area town, and the population, I think, is 8,000. And normally the student population is around 2,000.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, so what helped them out is partially having a lot of money. It's a $3 billion endowment for 2,000 students, so they're pretty much ready to shell out the cash whenever they want. And what's happening on campus, though, which is something that worried a lot of people and isn't going well right now from the students I'm still talking to, is that it's isolating for students in that they're separated into pods of anywhere from 2 to 10 people. And these are the only people they're allowed to interact with without masks indoors. And for some of these pods, these are freshmen where it's their first time ever alone from home. And so you can have 2 freshmen without a common space, so they only have their room. It is helpful that every student has a single as far as COVID spread goes. But if you're not happy with that one person you're with, it can be just, I think, really damaging to a lot of these students. And there's also been some recent tension where, of course, there's students who take the COVID guidelines extremely seriously. But being at college, a lot of the freshmen want to party. And there have been some gatherings, granted outdoors, where you have maybe like 40 to 50 people in close proximity, not really taking the mask seriously. And then you have the campus safety and security, who kind of enforce it, but they more so go around and say, hey, everyone, make sure your masks are on, and then walk away. And the students are kind of going to their RAs like, hey, make these people stop partying. But that's not really
what an RA
something they
can do. I mean, I've gone back and forth on the college thing. Like because the age, that age cohort, I think is unlikely to have serious, like broadly speaking, like I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but unlikely to have health problems in and of themselves. The real problem is that if it spreads around the campus, somebody goes off and gets a pizza, or somebody goes, or the teachers who are older, or somebody goes home. I mean, I think from my perspective, like I almost would like, if I had to set that up, I would say you come to college, you come onto campus, you cannot leave.
Right.
You cannot leave until, let's say, you can leave one time during the year, Christmas or something like that. You must have a test, and then you must self-quarantine for, 2 or 3 days after that test if it comes back negative, and then you can go. And I would probably have teachers behind, maybe even remote, so that they don't actually have to go into the classroom. It's almost like it's a little bit like Lord of the Flies on some level, but I think that you can actually sort of afford in a college situation, particularly in a school like that. That's a very isolated school. It's got a very self-contained campus. And on some level, if there's ever a scenario where you can say, let it run amok within these walls and work through it. But the problem is that sometimes it can be leaky, and then you're threatening the broader community. But if you're going to have the kids go back, the students go back, I almost think that's the better way to do it, because everything else you're setting up is like an impossibility. It's like, I don't know.
I think there was an episode of like Fresh Air a few weeks ago where they interviewed a guy who was talking about this and how there's these small towns that are like right-wing small towns, and they're really dependent on the economy that comes from the college towns, exactly, small college towns, rural college towns. Yet there's right-wingers who may not even necessarily, like, they're starting to come around to COVID because they're fearing for their lives, as there are now large concentrations of COVID rates popping up in these little college towns. And you're seeing that all over the map across America in some of these right-wing small towns.
I guess my point is that you've got two choices, it seems to me, if you're going to have students return to college campuses. And all college campuses don't have these two choices, right? I mean, some of them are just too disaggregated. And that is, one, you are asking college students to maintain a certain discipline that, in many respects, the whole 4 years of college is about teaching them on some level, and a lot of kids don't leave with that discipline. Or two, the other option is you make it like a chickenpox party, and you get it over with, and you protect the most vulnerable, and you keep them locked in that party room. I mean, I don't know of any other two options. And I think the issue is community spread outside of the college and keeping the professors safe, who are more vulnerable to this, undoubtedly, but kids going into that, obviously you got to make everybody aware of the risks that are associated with this, because COVID has less in kids who are 18 to 21, and not kids but young adults, can have very lasting, very difficult impact going forward in your life. And I think that the odds are such that you can allow college students and their families to make that choice. I don't know. I mean, I would obviously, that's just my theory. I'm perfectly happy to have someone debunk that, but appreciate the call.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, of course.
All right, man. All right. Take it easy. I remember I had a couple friends from high school who went to that college, I guess. Mm-hmm. All right, folks, that's it for the phone calls. We're going to take a couple IMs and get out of here. Oh, wait, this is important too. Alex Jones.
Oh, no. He's
breaking this story wide open. A lot of people say, Donald Trump, why does he, and again, the president has gained a lot of weight in office. That happens, I think, with every president. I certainly, during this time, I've gained a couple of pounds. I'm feeling the stress, but I try and eat well. You understand, the president, he's not a big fan of McDonald's, these fast food places. You understand why he has to do that, though, why he has to eat there, Nomi. You understand, right?
It's easy. It's easy for him.
It's not just that it's easy for him.
What is it then?
It's because the libs are trying to mess with his food. Yeah.
Oh, so McDonald's is safer.
Here we go. Alex Jones will explain.
Looks like
We're
he
all
has
guilty of it.
McDonald's.
Most of us are.
Oh, God, I can't stand
that we're sitting ducks. And Trump at 74, eating fast food. You know why he eats fast food, right? They send the Secret Service around. I was told this before it was in the news. He likes it anyways, but because they'll go to one McDonald's this time, one Burger King this time, one Wendy's that time. Because they don't trust these places to not jack with his food. Can you imagine? We'll just eat the White House food. He doesn't trust them. He's got spies all around him. It's crazy. Sean Hannity gets his food messed with. I know my food's been messed with. Then don't just take your bank accounts. They don't just take your credit card processing away. They don't just
what?
Deplatform you off the internet. They take your food and they put snot in it and boogers in it and they wipe their ass on it. And that's what they do, because that's what the left does, is they're a bunch of cowards. They never fight up front. They have no chivalry.
Whoa.
They have no bottom. They support pedophilia. They support Satanism. They support garbage.
You know,
Sam, have you ever done that to one of your...
No, but I will say I'm quite convinced that my kids are putting boogers in my food all the time. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if they're wiping their butts on my food, because that would be messy for them. But where is Alex Jones? Alex Jones is just like, he's just sort of locked in his own sort of hermetically sealed chamber now.
He's been out and about, actually, like telling people not to wear masks and stuff. Yeah,
he did these. He like went to some like voter registration events, or what was it? They like an outdoor at a park.
Yeah, he like went to Barton Springs.
I really want to see these guys get a little bit more brave about this. Look, we know that 40% of the people, right? They don't have COVID doesn't really impact them, more or less. So this is not, he's taking a little bit of a chance. I would like to see like one of these guys go out there and really try and catch it. Like, instead of just sort of saying like, I'm going to take the risk, like just really just go to a local hospital or something like that.
Sam.
Find somebody who has COVID and just say like, I'm going to pay you money to make out with me or something like that. Like a guy like Alex Jones, he's not there, like, he wants to talk about chivalry, like they think all this stuff is fictional and this and that. Just go for it. Go for it.
And then hide.
Well, I mean, maybe they show up and they're like, look, it doesn't affect me at all. Who knows?
I think that's what we call a Trump rally.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to some IMs here. And
by the way, if I have COVID, it's from that rally. I just want to make that very clear.
Oh,
I had a mask on. I was outside.
That's the point. You have a mask,
them away.
but they don't have a mask.
Yeah.
And so your mask is only like, slightly efficient. You're outside. That diminishes your chances, depending on what the wind is and how long you were talking to anybody. Them not having the masks, sends the cloud your way. But hopefully you're okay. Outside, I think, is the safest place to be anyways.
Yeah.
Colin from Nebraska. Sam has a Ben Sass pose. Penny from New Mexico. Can't wait.
Ben Sassy.
Ben, can't wait to watch Kamala kick Pence's ass while mother wrings her hands on the sideline watching him engage with another woman. Plexiglass shield was probably mother's idea. Ryan Cole. Sam. Nomiki. I think we're at the stage in the Trump presidency where he's committed to the Arkham Asylum. Phil from Boston. Sam, isn't it possible the Republicans are running conspiracy theory ads to activate the most crazy people to cause chaos? Yeah. Depressed Canadians. Hey, Sam, Jimmy Dore's insult about you should go off and write a Simpsons episode was not directed at you. I didn't think it was. That would be like, I would be okay with.
Yeah, I think you do.
Given the opportunity to write a Simpsons episode. It was directed at Dana Gould, another Boston area comedian. Yes, I remember Dana Gould. Tomorrow's my birthday, and I'm now a paid subscriber. Can I get a shofar? Yes. Not because of those things. Well, I mean, because of the birthday, I guess. Great leap forward. John Cornyn from Texas, a big Trump guy, was very critical of Trump yesterday. Tells me Texas is not locked up. Interesting. 2 more. Salt Lake City. Whoa. It's a big one. They attempted to pretend that wanting President Trump to die from a virus, which he's exacerbated in causing mass death and harm, is the same as wanting your conservative neighbor to die because they're conservative is patently ridiculous. He's not just a regular person. He's the most powerful person in the world. The discourse the right is obsessed with reminds me of Ellen saying it's okay she's friends with George W. Bush, as if it's the same as me, a regular person, a meat eater, being friends with a vegan. Power is always taken out of the discussion. Indeed. And the final IM of the day, all else. So now that Mike from PA has shown that you can spin off from being a regular MR caller into being a successful Twitch streamer, Which regular caller is next to join Twitch? Raygun, Jeff from Georgia. We already know Kowalski likes to play video games. Maybe Mindy or John from San Antonio could do some streams of city skylines or train simulator. We shall see. Nomi, folks, tune into our show today. Matt, Brendan, good job, guys. We'll see you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bulb, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know